Chapter 929. Zhongnan TV station acted quickly. After Gua Zhangyan received the good news, their station head, production department, and variety department heads arrived a few days later to discuss the details of the collaboration with Yang Yi and his China Star Production Company. It could be said that they had shown great sincerity. Yang Yi did not hesitate. According to the previous agreement, he prepared a variety show and a TV series to collaborate with Zhongnan TV station. However, regarding the variety show, he had not decided which show to put on Zhongnan TV station. Originally, Yang Yi wanted to produce a third variety show. Needless to say, it was the music variety show that he had prepared for Murphy's comeback, I Am a Singer. It was worth mentioning that Yang Yi had also considered whether to produce King of Masked Singers or I Am a Singer. However, after considering the purpose of producing the show, to promote Murphy's reputation, he finally chose the latter. After all, if she sang with her face covered, even if Murphy could continue to win and stand on the stage a few more times, she might still be able to take off her mask in the end. However, if she sang with her face covered, what kind of promotional effect would it have? However, Yang Yi considered Gua Zhangyan's intention of using the TV station as a window to promote the upgrading of Zhongqing's tourist attractions. Before taking out the proposal for I Am a Singer, he hesitated for a moment. In the end, the proposals for the two shows were placed in front of Zhongnan TV station head. He could only choose one. Yang Yi would not produce two shows at the same time. His China Star Production Company had not reached the scale to support 3 shows. Moreover, Zhongnan TV station did not have enough resources. Instead of splitting the resources, it was better to concentrate on one show. A parent-child variety show? Zhongnan TV station head, Wu Xiongdong, looked at the proposal's introduction in surprise. This is also an outdoor reality show? That's right. It's very different from the Limit Challenge. It's a celebrity reality show with a dual theme of parent-child and travel. It shows a few celebrity father-son pairs learning to interact with their children alone without their mother's company. The main focus is on the true relationship between father and son, Yang Yi explained. However, Wu Xiongdong didn't seem to have much interest in this program. After all, there was no precedent in the country for parent-child variety shows to be very popular after being broadcasted. Moreover, Yang Yi's 2 more popular variety shows did not have a parent-child model. Could a group of children crying and making a scene in front of the TV really attract people? Of course, when he faced Yang Yi, he didn't show any signs of doubt. Even though Wu Xiongdong had already rejected the show, out of respect for Yang Yi, he and the head of the variety department still seriously asked Yang Yi a few key questions. Will Mr. Yang bring your daughter to this program? Yang Yi shook his head and smiled. We'll pass. With my ability to take care of children, there's no point in participating in this program. Compared to the other celebrity fathers, it's a bit like the whole program is suppressing them and highlighting my excellence. It's not a good thing for the program. Of course, this was only one of the reasons. Yang Yi didn't say the main reason why he didn't want to participate was that he didn't want Shi to fall into the teeth of public opinion again. Yang Yi had seen it before. After Daddy, Let's Go was broadcasted in his previous life, the children who were originally second-generation celebrities directly transformed into small celebrities and were pursued by the media. However, within a few months, some children fell into a vicious whirlpool of public opinion. Not to mention some celebrity fathers who desperately let their children take on some advertising endorsements in order to earn money. There were also some children who were cheated by the media. For example, Angela in the first season and Feynman in the second season were actually very simple and ignorant children, but the media kept hyping up their negative news. One moment, it was said that Angela was dressed in famous brands at a young age and had princess syndrome. The next moment, it was said that Feynman was spoiled by his father and grew into a little fatty. What's more, it wasn't known if the media had a grudge against Feynman's father, but the photos they used didn't highlight Feynman's cuteness and cheerfulness. Instead, they used a photo of Feynman looking like a fool. Regardless of whether a child was really naughty and willful, even if they were, it was a child's nature and they would slowly improve in the process of growing up. However, under the spotlight of the media, every mistake of a child would be magnified and criticized as a heinous flaw. This was the gossip media. For their own benefit, they would desperately dig up negative news about celebrities for publicity. However, when the spearhead was pointed at the child, Yang Yi was worried that it would cause serious harm to Shi. Therefore, he had always been protecting Shi closely, just like how Lin XX protected Kimmy in his previous life. The media had very little information about Shi, and Shi basically didn't participate in variety shows. Even if she became very popular because of some small matters, Yang Yi didn't need her to shoot commercials. Shi's growth didn't appear in the spotlight. It was a little too far-fetched. It wasn't that Yang Yi didn't like the show, Daddy, Let's Go. It was just that he didn't want to delay Shi's studies, so Yang Yi wouldn't bring Shi along. However, since Yang Yi wasn't participating, Wu Xiongdong's expectations for this show were even lower. For this show, will the tourist attractions be located in Zhongqing or the entire Jiangnan area? This was the second question. The first episode can be set in Zhongqing, but the next few stations will be located nationwide. There's even a possibility that one episode will be set overseas. Yang Yi said, "It's also a big feature of this show to let the stars understand different cultures and customs together." He couldn't choose to set all the shows in Jiangnan. That would only benefit others. Wu Xiongdong, who was always thinking about his political career, finally put down the proposal for this show and picked up the proposal for I Am a Singer. This show is good. The person in charge of the production department took some time to flip through the proposal. He said excitedly, "With the music variety show China's Voice hyping up the music variety show market, if we launch this show at a different time, we'll definitely be able to capture a lot of viewers from China's Voice." The reason he gave was that this show focused on the singing skills of talented singers who had already debuted. To a certain extent, it was similar to China's Voice's pursuit of the quality of singing. Moreover, the people invited were all celebrities. It would be more of a hot topic than China's Voice. I also think that this show will be popular. Looking at the competition format of this show, other than the first contestant who can sing their own representative works, the other contestants must cover other people's works. Moreover, other than the qualifying and elimination rounds, there's also a challenge round. Various modes of competition will greatly increase the viewing value of this show. The person in charge of the variety show had a unique insight. Yang Yi listened to their opinions and could basically understand which show they would choose. Regarding this, Yang Yi did not feel any regret. After all, I Am a Singer and Daddy, Let's Go were two different types of variety shows. They were both popular, but as for which show was more popular, that was a matter of opinion. Regardless of which show Jiangnan TV station chose, they would not be at a disadvantage. Of course, Wu Xiongdong still held Yang Yi in high regard. After he made the decision, he enthusiastically asked Yang Yi if he could keep the proposal for Daddy, Let's Go, so that they could consider whether to continue working together on the second show after they finished producing I Am a Singer. It was considered a polite request. Yang Yi neither agreed nor objected. Since I Am a Singer had been decided, the show's schedule began to be pushed forward. Coincidentally, the first episode of China's Voice had entered the final stage. The production team could gradually withdraw from this show and invest in the preparation work for I Am a Singer. Besides, Jiangnan TV station had indeed given their maximum support. As Wu Xiongdong needed to discuss with Yang Yi in detail about the TV series The People's XX, that Gua Zhengyan was very concerned about, he needed to send the others away. Therefore, a few of the people in charge under him went to another meeting room to discuss the broadcast time of the show with Yun Yongfeng and the others, as well as the connections and resources that they needed from Jiangnan TV station. After the others left, Wu Xiongdong briefly explained the current situation to Yang Yi. For this TV series, due to the theme, we need to inform the higher-ups in advance. Not only Jiangnan province, but also the capital. Therefore, we need Mr. Yang to provide the script as soon as possible. However, you don't have to worry. Mayor Gua has already made arrangements. As long as the content is not too biased, the capital will support it. Indeed, it was easier to do things with someone in the court. With Gua Zhengyan's support, everything became simple. Chapter 930. Mommy is going on a business trip. She might not come back until very late. If it's too late, she might not come back until tomorrow. You have to stay at home today and help Papa take care of your brother, okay? On Sunday, Murphy had to go to Shanghai to record an episode of Jixin Interview. When it was time to leave, Murphy reluctantly said goodbye to Shi and Tong Tong. Ever since Tong Tong was born, Murphy had never left her child's side. She usually watched Yang Yi's farewell show. However, every time Yang Yi had to leave home for a business trip, Shi would be so sad that her eyes would turn red. When it was her turn to go on a business trip and she wanted to be sad, Shi did not cooperate. Hee. The little girl seemed to be happy. She mischievously twisted around and smiled. I'll help my brother take care of Papa. I thought Mom was talking about this, but Mom, I think it's funny to say this, hee. Are you that happy when Mom is not at home? Mo Fei scratched her little nose grumpily and said, You don't feel sad at all. Mommy is going to be angry. Hee, Mom, don't be angry. Anyway, you'll be back soon. She hugged her mother's neck and comforted her. Murphy did not know what to do with this little girl. She had to go to Yang Yi for comfort. The two of them were affectionate for a while. She carried her bag and got into Mo Xiaozhuan's car. Yang Yi was not as optimistic as Shi. After he sent Murphy off, he turned around and saw Tong Tong knocking on the sofa with a small spatula. He could not help but feel a little troubled. He could be considered experienced in taking care of children. It could even be said that he was widely liked by Cici and her friends. However, no matter how experienced he was, Yang Yi was not confident in dealing with a baby who did not speak reason at all. Will Tong Tong cry when Murphy is not at home? Would he keep pestering her for his mother? Only drinking milk and not drinking breast milk, would the little bitch be willing to obediently sleep peacefully? Would it cause trouble? When it came to taking care of Tong Tong, Yang Yi had to admit that Murphy had done much more than he had. After all, she was Murphy's mother. Tong Tong was more willing to be close to her mother, unlike Shi. The little girl stuck to her father and did not care about her mother. However, Yang Yi was not particularly anxious. He had to give it a try to know if Yang Yi could take care of the two children without Murphy. Moreover, this could be considered as a practical exercise in advance. Murphy still had more than a month to promote her album. Yang Yi still had many days to take care of the two children by himself. Just as Yang Yi was letting his imagination run wild, Tong Tong seemed to feel his father's gaze. He knocked on the door, then suddenly turned his head and glanced at his father. Coincidentally, he met his father's gaze. It was a little like a thief who turned his head and saw a policeman while trying to pick a lock. Tong Tong opened his little mouth, revealing a few white teeth. He giggled, turned his head, and ran away. Although Tong Tong only had a pair of short, fleshy legs, his small, quick steps were strong and steady. It was just that when his little butt moved, it gave the feeling of a three-wheeled trampoline jolting. Sister! Sister! Tong Tong raised his little hand high, holding his small forklift in his hand. He called out in a childish voice and walked in the direction of Shi. Don't come over. Don't dirty Papa's clothes. Shi's voice came from afar. Cici was diligently helping her father with his work. Yang Yi took out a large bucket of clothes that had been washed several times in the washing machine. Cici was responsible for pulling out the clothes that were rolled up together, hanging them on the hanger, and putting them on the chair next to her. She was waiting for her father to come over later to dry them. This was a very good way to earn gold coins. Although the big bucket of clothes, Tong Tong had the most, seemed to be half of Shi's height, it actually took less than 20 minutes to finish. However, the reward was 1 gold coin. It was much easier than Lon Xian, who had to work hard for an hour every day. However, Tong Tong was so excited that he decisively ignored his sister's rejection message and walked over to his sister with swaying steps. Cici's busyness still attracted his attention. Little Momo even forgot the purpose of his visit. He blinked his big eyes and looked around. Suddenly, he pointed at a small sock on the side. There was a cartoon character he liked on it. Of course, it was also his own sock. Wow. Tong Tong stretched out his empty left hand and pointed at the small sock confusedly. She ignored him. The little girl was busy drying the clothes. Today's gold coin was very important to Shi. Yang Yi also walked over. However, he did not rush to greet Tong Tong. Instead, he secretly observed him to see how he was going to play this game. Tong Tong was puzzled as he looked at the sock that his sister had placed on a small stool. Then, he squatted down. No, squatting was a difficult action for Tong Tong. He swayed and sat down. This action made Yang Yi's eyelids twitch. Fortunately, she was able to control herself. Xiao Ruo didn't sit too heavily on her and didn't make herself cry. However, what made Yang Yi not know whether to laugh or cry was that this little guy actually grabbed one of his little feet, hugged it with both hands, and lifted it up forcefully. It was obvious that Tong Tong wanted to see his own sock. He had already worn it on his feet, so why was it still on the small stool? However, when he did this, little rascal could not control himself and his balance. He hugged his little feet and staggered backward. His entire body fell to the ground like a wheel. There was no need to mention how comical this scene was. Yang Yi almost laughed out loud. Although Tong Tong did not look like he was going to cry, Yang Yi still bent down and picked him up. Tong Tong, who was still in a state of confusion, found his bearings. He pointed at the sock on the small stool in his father's arms and said in a childish voice, "Wah wah. I know. It's your sock. But I've already washed it. I'll take it out to dry in the sun later," Yang Yi explained with a smile. Tong Tong, of course, did not understand. He looked at his father for a while and decided to give up on this question. Okay. Tong Tong stayed in his father's arms for less than a few minutes. He could not stay still and stretched out his hands, wanting to walk on his own. Okay, go play. Yang Yi put Tong Tong down. Tong Tong immediately grabbed the small forklift that his father had thrown on the ground and started to push it. He had no intention of sticking to his father. Half an hour later, Tong Tong was still playing by himself. However, Steamed Bun was now with him. Steamed Bun was very patient with the baby. When Tong Tong touched his body, Steamed Bun, who was lying on his side, stretched out his hind legs and kindly scratched Tong Tong's back. This made Tong Tong laugh loudly. Yang Yi came back from hanging the clothes outside with a basket in his hand. He smiled and watched for a while, feeling very relaxed. However, when he turned around, he saw Shi standing next to him and looking at him eagerly. "What's wrong?" Yang Yi rubbed his daughter's head and asked softly, "Do you miss your mother?" "No. Papa, you haven't given me a gold coin yet." She said seriously as she stretched out her white and tender hand. "Okay, this little girl is quite persistent." Yang Yi took out a game coin and handed it to Shi. Seeing she happily go upstairs with her gold coin, Yang Yi thought that there would be no follow-up. However, he did not expect that Shi would come down with a handful of gold coins and count them in front of her father. 1, 2, 3, 6. "Papa, I have 6 gold coins." Yang Yi had a bad feeling when he saw Shi counting. Sure enough, the little girl raised her head happily and said sweetly, "Papa, I have 6 gold coins. 3, 2 dolls." She wanted dolls at this time? Where would Yang Yi get dolls for her? Chapter 931. Papa, let's go shopping. Shi looked at her father expectantly. Sure enough, just as Yang Yi's ominous premonition had predicted, Cici had come to cause trouble for him. He was wondering why she was so attentive today. Early in the morning, regardless of her mother's business trip, she pestered him to do housework. However, Yang Yi couldn't take her shopping today, because Murphy was not at home and he had to take care of Tong Tong. How could he have time to take Shi shopping to buy dolls? Just when Yang Yi was about to refuse, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. At home, would Tong Tong soon remember that his mother was not around and pester him for his mother? If they went out to play, there were constantly new things coming into his eyes, and he was busy looking at Tong Tong in this big flower world. Would he temporarily not want Murphy because he had fun? This was a very interesting idea, and Yang Yi felt that he could give it a try. Of course, he didn't agree to Shi's request so easily. Yang Yi gently shook his head, and under Shi's puzzled eyes, he said, "If Papa goes shopping with you, who will take care of your brother?" Shi said without hesitation, "Me, Papa, I can help you. My brother also likes to play with me." Yang Yi said with a smile, "If you are helping Papa take care of your brother, how can you have time to go shopping?" Yes, there was a problem with this logic. Shi was dumbfounded. She was stunned for a while and found that she couldn't get out of this strange logic circle, but she was unwilling to give up her beautiful wish of going shopping. She stretched out her small hand, holding her 6 gold coins, and asked pitifully, Then what should I do?" "There is a compromise. Papa said that I will consider it for you, okay?" Yang Yi said with a smile, "Let's take Momo shopping." "Okay. Good. Little brother, let's go shopping together." She didn't wait for her father to finish speaking. She immediately nodded her little head excitedly and jumped up and down. "Don't worry, let me finish. It's impolite to interrupt others," Yang Yi said. She immediately became well-behaved. She ran over obediently, held her father's hand, and listened attentively. "When little brother goes shopping, Daddy doesn't need you to take care of him. Daddy just needs to carry him. But little brother isn't so easy to coax. You want him to accompany you shopping, so you need him to share your happiness. Don't you have 6 gold coins? You can exchange them for 2 dolls, right? This time, you can choose a soft toy and give the remaining 3 gold coins to your brother. Let him choose a toy that he likes, okay?" Yang Yi said with a smile. Buying 2 dolls for Shi at once, Yang Yi felt that his house would be filled with dolls in a few months. Yang Yi thought of a way to deduct a little. That's right, these fathers and mothers were so bad. Shi felt that something was wrong. She hesitated. But I only have 6 gold coins after a long time. I really want 2 dolls. That's right, Shi had worked very hard to do housework for this day. It wasn't easy for her to save up 6 gold coins. Even when she had 5 gold coins yesterday, she couldn't bear to spend it. She wanted to round it up and get 2 gold coins at once. It was so hard to give up. Yang Yi tempted her, 2 dolls, you can give one to little brother so that he can share your happiness. Such a good thing, don't you think so? Little brother will accompany you shopping. Then can I buy 2 dolls and give one to little brother to play with? She looked at her father expectantly. This little girl was really smart. She seemed to know that as long as it was hers, she could still take it back if she lent it to little brother. There was a fundamental difference between giving in the front and giving in the back. You see, when little brother has a small truck, he sometimes gives it to you to play with, right? Yang Yi smiled and said, "My brother loves you very much. So, if you are willing to give him a gift that he likes, in the future, if he has other good things, will he also think of leaving a share for you? When he grows up and earns a lot of money, will he be willing to give half of it to sister to buy things that sister likes?" At first, Yang Yi was a little selfish. He wanted to deduct Shi's gold coins. However, as he spoke, he suddenly felt that his idea was good. Perhaps, it could improve the relationship between the sister and little brother. Therefore, he insisted on it. Yang Yi's bewitchment finally took effect. In Shi's mind, the scene described by her father appeared. Now, she was using 3 gold coins to buy a toy for little brother. In the future, when little brother earned gold coins, he could give half of it to her. Sister, look, this is your new doll. Do you like it?" In Shi's imagination, Tong, who was a little older, would come to give her dolls every now and then. This scene was too beautiful. It seemed like a good idea. It was like planting a seed in spring. In autumn, she could harvest a lot of dolls. He. The little girl inexplicably laughed and said to her father enthusiastically, "Okay then, I just want a doll. Then, I'll buy a toy for little brother." This time, Yang Yi was not as relaxed as before. He had prepared for a long time. It could be said that he had made a lot of preparations. In the backpack, Yang Yi stuffed Tong's milk powder, baby bottles, thermos flasks with hot water, new diapers, dry and wet tissues, saliva, small towels, and so on. In the luggage bag left in the car, Yang Yi had also prepared 1 or 2 spare clothes, including a shirt, pants, jacket, socks, and so on. There was also a thick blanket. It was very cold outside. Although it was very warm in the mall, it was better to be prepared. Don't think that this was all. When Yang Yi went to put the baby car's safety basket, for Tong Tong, he thought for a while and turned back to put the folding baby carriage in the trunk of the Hummer. With such strict preparations, it was enough for a trip, let alone a shopping trip. In comparison, Yang Yi had prepared very little for Shi. Other than telling Shi to wear enough clothes, he had only brought a small water bottle for Shi in his backpack. However, this was understandable. Now that Shi had grown up, she was not as troublesome as before. Even if Shi wanted to eat something, she could buy it directly in the mall. There was no need for her to bring a bunch of things with her. When everything was ready, Yang Yi greeted Sisi, who couldn't wait any longer. Then, he smiled and stretched out his hand to Xiaowu, who had been dressed and was just sitting there playing by himself. "Come on, Xiaowu, let's go shopping." When it was time to go out, Tong Tong was quite obedient. However, when Yang Yi carried him to the safety basket and let him lie down and fasten the seatbelt, Tong Tong seemed to feel a little uneasy and started to struggle. Mom. The little boy tried his best to straighten his neck and look around, looking for traces of his dearest and most beloved mother. Chapter 932. Oh no! Yang Yi did not expect that Tong Tong, who had been living in a familiar environment, would be so anxious to see his mother when the environment changed. Perhaps he was feeling insecure? But wasn't his father here? Yang Yi looked helplessly at the little guy who was crying and struggling to get out of the car. As he comforted him, he realized that his position in his son's heart was far lower than Murphy's. "Mom, I want Mom." Tong Tong looked at his father pitifully and looked around with tears in his eyes. He looked as though he was going to cry if he did not see his mother. Yang Yi felt a little regretful. If he had known earlier, he would not have agreed to go shopping with Shi. However, it was too late to say anything now. Since he had already agreed to go shopping with Shi, he would not disappoint Shi. Therefore, he could only carry Tong Tong out of the car and gently pat his back to comfort him. "Mommy will be back tonight. Daddy will be with you now, so don't be afraid. Tong Tong, you are a man. How can you cry in front of your sister?" Yang Yi was also nagging. He did not care whether Tong Tong could understand him, he just kept talking. Shi also unbuckled her seatbelt. She put her arms on her brother's seat and looked at him anxiously. However, at this moment, Shi could only worry for her father. There was nothing she could do. Yang Yi spent a lot of time coaxing little Tao Wu. After much difficulty, he finally managed to get the little fellow who was about to cry to wipe away the tears in his eyes. All that was left was a pout of grievance. However, little Tao Wu's emotions had stabilized and he didn't continue to ask for his mother. He had already cried, but his mother had not come out yet. He could only make do with his father for a while. Yes, he would ask for his mother later. Yang Yi put Tong Tong back into the car and scratched his chubby cheeks with a smile. "Let's go shopping. There's a lot of fun stuff. You'll definitely like it." "That's right, little brother. Go out and play with big sister." He. She made a face at Tong Tong. Tong Tong was still immersed in the sadness of not being able to find her mother. At this moment, she could only stare blankly at her sister. They drove all the way east and arrived at Hai Hong Shopping Mall in Binhai District. This was also the largest children's shopping mall in the city that she was most familiar with. Before they got out of the car, Shi excitedly sang in her seat, "La la la, we're here. We bought a doll. Brother, don't cry. What are you singing?" Yang Yi was still pulling the handbrake. When he heard Shi's improvised composition, he shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. After the little girl got out of the car, she could not wait to jump up and down beside him. She laughed in her crisp voice and said, Hee. Papa, let's hurry up." Perhaps he was affected by his sister's happy mood, but when Tong Tong was carried out of the car by his father, he could not help but look at his sister and laugh. It was cold outside, so Yang Yi had dressed Tong Tong in a lot of clothes. At such a small size, he looked as fat as a rice dumpling. How could he be as pretty as his sister? His sister was tall and slim. Even though she was wearing a down jacket, she looked very slim. She did not look fat at all. Shi, come and help Daddy. Yang Yi called out to Shi and asked her to help him unfold the folded baby cart. It was a little inconvenient for him to carry Tong Tong. Shi was very obedient. She ran over quickly and used her good strength to help her father unfold the folded baby cart from the trunk. However, when she looked at the pile of things, Shi was worried. Papa, I don't know how to unfold it. It's okay. You can unbutton that button first. Yang Yi instructed her from the side. Shi finally finished unfolding the baby cart. The little girl clapped her hands and stood by the side. She listened to her father's praise and smiled sweetly. Her heart was filled with a sense of accomplishment. Yang Yi put Tong Tong in the baby cart and carried his school bag. Then, he pushed the baby cart with one hand and held Shi's hand with the other. They walked through the elevator from the underground parking lot to Hai Hong Shopping Mall. When they arrived at the bright and grand shopping mall, not only was there plenty of light, but it was also as bright as day outside. Moreover, there were all kinds of colorful signboards. It was so beautiful that it was too much for the eyes to take in. When she saw it, she became even more enthusiastic. The little girl let go of her father's hand and happily jumped around her father. You cannot hold my hand, but you can't run around. You have to stay with me. Yang Yi reminded Shi softly. Otherwise, I have to take care of your brother and you at the same time. What if I don't pay attention and leave you in this big shopping mall? What if I can't find you? She didn't seem to hear her father's words. However, she didn't run around as she liked. Perhaps because she was in a good mood, the little girl ran back and said sweetly, Papa, let me help you push the baby cart. Yang Yi rubbed her little head and said lovingly, Thank you, Shi. I can do it myself. Help me go to the front and take care of your brother. Don't let him sit in the car alone. It's too boring. Okay. She agreed readily. She trotted to the front and turned her head to look at Tong Tong. Tong Tong had already been moved by the dazzling array of goods in the surrounding shops. His neck turned back and forth, and his eyes shone brightly. In such a wonderful place, he had forgotten his previous sadness. At this moment, a dark shadow appeared in front of him. Tong Tong came back to his senses and closed his small mouth that had been open all this time. He was about to drool. He. Tong Tong saw that it was his sister. He stretched out his small hand and waved to her happily. However, his sister just glanced at him, straightened up, and ran to report to her father excitedly. Papa, my brother is not bored. He's smiling. Seeing that Tong Tong did not have any emotional fluctuations, Yang Yi felt relieved. He secretly thought that his idea was effective. With more new things, Tong Tong did not rely on his mother as much. In the future, if he made a fuss, he could try to give him some other games to distract his attention. She was very familiar with Hai Hong Shopping Mall. She walked in front with ease and brought her father and brother to her favorite toy store. When Yang Yi and the others entered, the salesperson happily came up to them and greeted them. Speaking of which, no one recognized Yang Yi in Hai Hong Shopping Mall. After all, Hai Hong Shopping Mall specialized in selling children's products. Most of the adults who came here had their own children with them. They were too busy taking care of their children, so how could they have the time to chase after celebrities? Perhaps, Shi's lively and pretty appearance attracted some people's attention, but Yang Yi, who was wearing a cap and obediently pushing a stroller, did not attract much attention. The salesperson in the toy store recognized Yang Yi, so she greeted him. However, she only greeted him and did not rush to ask for an autograph or a photo. Because Yang Yi had brought Shi here many times, the salesperson did not have the enthusiasm to take a photo with them. Moreover, in order to keep Yang Yi, this VIP, Their boss told the salesperson not to spread the news and not to make any noise. Chapter 933. When she entered the doll store, she was like an eagle entering a rabbit's nest. She happily ran to the front and raised her head high. Her beautiful big eyes reflected the various dolls placed on the counter. There are bunnies, ponies, and Princess Yen Yen. Wow, there are so many beautiful dolls. She held her small hands and muttered happily. Her small body twirled around as if all the dolls in the store were hers. In the back, in order not to disturb Yang-yi, a few waitresses stood behind the counter and watched. They were secretly envious of Shi. They whispered, "It's really a blessing to have a celebrity father. And a celebrity father who knows how to make money and take care of the family." In this month, Yang-yi has come to buy dolls for her countless times. Do they have to use a big cabinet to store their dolls? This waitress didn't know that she had guessed correctly. It really seems that there is such a father who can buy me a lot of dolls. Hey, how old are you? You still buy dolls? If it were me, I would want a father who can buy me a lot of bags. No, I think dolls are more interesting than bags. I just want my father to buy me dolls. There is an honest person here. Help me hold her down. They didn't know that in fact, Yang-yi also had a limit. He didn't buy so many dolls for Shi. Otherwise, Shi wouldn't be so conflicted. The little girl, who was dazzled, ran back after a while. She hugged her father's hand and said coquettishly, "Papa, I saw a lot of new dolls. They are all super beautiful. I like this one, and that one over there, that one." She held her father's hand with one hand and let go with the other. She pointed around and finally looked at her father pitifully. "I don't know how to choose." Yang-yi was unmoved. He smiled and said, "Then close your eyes and pick one. As for the rest, you continue to work hard to earn gold coins. We'll talk about it next time." She shook her little butt, but she also knew that her father would not be easily moved by her. She pouted her little mouth, threw down a sentence, and ran out again. "I don't want to randomly choose. I'll go take a look again." Yang-yi had learned a truth from Murphy. When accompanying a woman shopping, one must know how to take a break. This was a battle of attrition, so it was important to make the best use of the time to recuperate. The same principle also applied to Shi, who was not yet a woman. Yang-yi didn't care about Cici, who was still choosing. He pushed the baby cart and sat down on the wooden stool that was meant for guests to rest. At the same time, he turned the cart around so that Xiao Wei could see him. Xiao Tianguan was still in the midst of playing. When he saw his father, he danced with joy and even opened his mouth to giggle. "Come, let's take a walk." Yang-yi smiled and carried Tong Tong out. Tong Tong was wearing little shoes, so Yang-yi put him on his knees. The little guy could not wait to stand up by stepping on his father's knees. However, this was not safe. Tong Tong almost fell backwards. Fortunately, Yang-yi reached out and held his little butt in time. "Don't be in such a hurry. Come down first." Yang-yi put Tong Tong on the ground. Tong Tong stepped on the stool firmly. This time, he entered a state of excitement. At first, he held the edge of the wooden stool for support. When he found that he could stand firmly, he shook his little fist and walked forward with small steps while giggling. "Where are you going?" Yang-yi hugged Tong Tong and asked him to come back to his side. Unexpectedly, little Momo was like a toy soldier that had been wound up. He didn't care about his father's interference at all and kept walking forward. His father carried him back and put him on the ground. He walked forward again, was carried back, and continued walking. "Okay. Let me see what you are so obsessed with." Yang-yi had no choice but to put the backpack in the baby stroller. He stood up from the wooden stump, bent down, and followed behind the stumbling little Tao Wu. Tong Tong could walk, but his steps were not stable. Yang-yi was not particularly worried at home with the protection of the carpet and furniture. However, Yang-yi still had to be careful in the mall. He was ready to give the little guy a hand at any time. However, What made Yang Yi feel helpless was that Tong Tong did not seem to be obsessed with a specific object. He just liked to look at flowers on horseback. The little guy had a cute smile on his face as he walked in front of Yang Yi. Just like his sister, he could not stop. Yang Yi was tall and strong, so it was difficult for him to bend down and follow behind Tong Tong. However, he still thought of a way. Tong Tong's coat had a hat. Yang Yi shook out his hat and held it in his hand. This way, he could walk Tong Tong like he was walking a dog. Even if he still had to bend down slightly, it was much more comfortable than leaning down with his two hands. Papa, Jia, at #yen the little guy felt that it was a little strange to walk like this. He stopped and looked back in confusion. However, it seemed that there was nothing special. Little Momo chattered with his father some Martian language, then turned his head and walked forward as if he had not had enough of it. Yang Yi shook his head gently. He felt that the next time he brought Tong Tong out, he really needed to buy a dog leash. No, this was a children's mall. There should be a safety leash for walking children. He would buy one later. Fortunately, the little guy was still young and could not walk endlessly. After a while, he could not walk anymore. If it was not for his father pulling on his little hat, he would have fallen to the ground. Yang Yi picked up little Lao Ai, who was still looking around as if he hadn't had enough. Shi, who was in a dilemma, finally came back. However, she was holding two dolls in her hands, one big and one small. The big one was a dog with golden, long, and curly hair. The small one was an adorable alpaca. You can only pick one. Yang Yi pointed a finger at Shi and said with a smile. He was a very strict and impartial father. I want to give my little brother one. Shi pouted slightly. She handed the dog to Tong Tong and looked at him expectantly. She coaxed, "Little brother, do you like this one?" Tong Tong did not refuse and directly hugged it in his arms. Although it was a little difficult for him to hold it, he still had to lean on his father's chest to hold it down. However, when the little guy looked at the big dog in his arms and compared it with the smaller doll in his sister's hands, he still smiled with satisfaction. Shi, you're not being honest," Yang Yi said in amusement. "Didn't we agree to let your little brother choose?" "My little brother likes this too." Shi blinked innocently. Shi and her father had previously discussed this method of choosing a gift for her little brother, but this possibility had already been rejected. However, Shi really did not know how to choose these two dolls, so she could only try to take advantage of this loophole. "No, these are not the toys that my little brother likes to play with. Let's take him to pick another one after we leave this shop," Yang Yi said seriously. "Do you want this alpaca? Then let's put this dog down first." No. Shi looked at the doll in her little brother's arms reluctantly. She compared it with the one in her hands and decided to buy the big one. "I still like dogs more. Let's get a dog." "Are you sure? You're going to buy this one?" Yang Yi pointed at the golden dog plushie that was being held upside down by Xiao Tao's little hands and one of the dog's legs. Yes. Let's get a dog." Although Shi said that, her eyes were still reluctant to part with the alpaca in her arms. However, after she put the alpaca back and Yang Yi paid the bill, Shi found that Tong Tong was reluctant to return the dog doll to her. The little guy sat in the baby stroller, holding the dog doll with an excited look on his face. "Papa, you see, my little brother still likes it." She pouted her small mouth, feeling wronged. Yang Yi laughed. "It's okay. This doll is yours. Let's go find another toy that he likes and exchange it with him later. He will definitely return it to you." She could only accept her father's arrangement. But, why did it feel like she was losing out? Chapter 934. Going shopping was much more fun than staying at home. Tong Tong had a lot of fun that day, especially after he bought the robot that he wanted. He had completely forgotten about his mother. At least, that was what it seemed like now. However, Tong Tong was still young and had limited energy. After playing for the whole morning, the little guy hugged his robot and fell asleep in the baby stroller before 11 o'clock. Yang Yi wanted to tell her that it was time to go home, but she was not done playing. She pestered her father and said that she wanted to play in the bubble ball park in the middle of the first floor of the shopping mall. The so-called bubble ball park was actually a small trick used by merchants to attract the attention of children. It was similar to an air mattress temporary amusement park. It was in the middle of the shopping mall, surrounded by an air mattress. The air mattress was filled with bubble balls, and it was not deep. It was just over half of she's calf. As long as it was not a little guy like Tong Tong, it would not be dangerous. There were not many things to play with, such as a small slope made of soft cushions and a few short basketball racks. Even so, such a simple and crude amusement park still attracted many children. Some children even pestered their parents to come to the shopping mall just to play with bubble balls. Seeing that she was so happy and cooperative, Yang Yi bought a ticket for her. He reminded her about the things to take note of and let her play in the amusement park. There were many 3- or 4-year-old children inside, and their mothers had even bought tickets to accompany them inside. However, children as old as Cici could basically toss and turn inside by themselves, stirring up the bubble ball pond to become extremely lively, and there would not be any danger. Their parents just had to look after them outside the air mattress next to them. Yang Yi was a little bored, so he bought a cup of non-authentic coffee from a nearby coffee and milk tea shop. He drank it by the side and smiled as he watched Shishi play with the bubble balls. Although it was not a big deal for adults, Shishi was still very happy with the simple game. The little girl had bright eyes, white teeth, fair skin, and red lips. Her bright smile was like a beautiful flower blooming under the winter sun. Yang Yi's mood became inexplicably cheerful when he saw this. Coincidentally, Yang Yi finally had some free time. Murphy, who had gone to Shanghai, also called him. "You've been busy until now. I saw Sister Luo Xian just now and chatted with her for a while. That's why I called you guys." Murphy was usually strict in front of others. However, when she was alone with Yang Yi, she let down all her guard when she called him. She was like a teenage girl calling her boyfriend. Her voice was filled with joy and a hint of coquettishness. "How is Mommy? Did he cause you any trouble? Hee, do you miss me now?" As for the last sentence, Murphy was not asking Lil Rascal. Just like when Yang Yi was not at home, she missed Yang Yi all day long and thought about all the good things he did when he was at home. Murphy also asked Yang Yi proudly, "Did you miss me?" "I was at home, so Mommy didn't cause so much trouble." Yang Yi obviously understood. He smiled and said, "I miss you, of course I miss you. But don't worry, just focus on your work. I can still take care of the house for now." In order to satisfy Murphy's vanity as a mother, Yang Yi also told Murphy that he had brought Tong Tong out shopping, and Tong Tong had been crying in the car, crying for his mother. Murphy was secretly happy and worried about Tong Tong. She was only relieved when she knew that Tong Tong's mood had improved. However, she still complained sourly, "You guys went shopping when I wasn't at home." Yang Yi explained again. After chatting for a while, Murphy, who missed her son, urged Yang Yi to start a video chat. She wanted to see how her son looked like when he was sleeping. Yang Yi did not hesitate. He started the video chat, turned the camera on the back, and squatted down to take a picture of Tong Tong for Murphy to see. "Good girl, sleeping soundly and not thinking about Mommy," Mo Fei said with a smile as she looked at them. However, she still picked out some mistakes and asked Yang Yi to correct them. "Mommy didn't cover herself properly with the blanket, and her left hand is exposed. Why are you hugging a toy when you're sleeping? You can't do that. It's uncomfortable when it's pressed on your chest. You seem to have taken the wrong blanket. This is the blue blanket that Mommy used at home. It's a little thin. You should have taken the thicker gray blanket. Sigh, it's all my fault. I didn't tell you clearly." Murphy stared at her son for a long time. She then looked at his calm little face and asked Yang Yi to take a picture of Shi for her to see. She was very engrossed in playing. The little girl took advantage of her long legs and nimbly climbed up the slope. She slid down happily and nimbly climbed up again. The other children, who had to use their hands and feet to climb up, were all stunned by the side with their mouths wide open. "Can I call Shi over to talk to you?" Yang Yi asked. Murphy shook her head and said, Don't. It's rare that I'm not at home. She and my brother aren't crying or making a fuss. Don't tease them. I just asked Big Sister Luoxin. We'll start recording in the afternoon. If it goes well, we'll be back after dinner. I'm going to look at the script now. There's something I want to talk to Big Sister Luoxin about during lunch. Okay, take care of yourself. Don't worry about the children. The two of them chatted intimately for a while before hanging up. After she played for an hour, Yang Yi asked her to come out and go home together. Mom just called. Yang Yi took out a towel and wiped the sweat on Shi's face. Mom called. She asked in surprise, "Is Mom coming back?" "No, she just arrived in Shanghai." Yang Yi said with a smile, "She called back to care about you and your brother." She suddenly lost interest in this topic. She took her father's hand and excitedly told him the interesting things that happened in the bubble ball park. "Papa, let me tell you. I have a younger brother. He also played on the slide and then fell down like this." The little girl was so excited that she even stretched her arms and acted like a piece of wood rolling down. After the performance, she couldn't help but hold her father's hand. She laughed so hard that she didn't even have the strength to stand up straight. Yang Yi pushed Tong Tong with one hand and held Shi with the other. From the elevator to the parking lot, Shi didn't stop. She was happily telling her father about the interesting things. "You even helped a little girl up? That's so good. Did she say thank you?" Yang Yi didn't just listen. He also responded with a smile. "Yes, but it wasn't the little girl who said it. Her mom said thank you." She giggled as she got into the car. She pulled up the safety belt on the seat without her father's help. After the little girl sat down, she held her dog doll in front of her. However, her eyes fell on the robot that her father put between her and her brother. "Papa, this is my brother's." She said to her father obediently. "Oh, this? Just put it there. Your mother said that you can't let your brother hug it to sleep." Yang Yi said without raising his head as he adjusted Tong Tong's safety belt and quilt. She rolled her eyes. She reached out and took the robot and fiddled with it. "This is the toy I gave to my brother. Can I play with it? If I also like it, can it also be considered as mine? But my brother is a little naughty. He always breaks the toys." Alas, Yang Yi didn't know that some thoughts flashed through his daughter's mind. He drove home. From the morning until now, everything was going smoothly. He hoped that this would continue. Chapter 935. Steamed Bun. Today was supposed to be a happy day, without being bullied by the 3 cat sisters and brother cat. I even wagged my sexiest tail to welcome the owners back. However, when Steamed Bun came out of the small door, he saw Shi coming out of the car with a dog doll in her arms. Seeing that the dog doll had blonde hair that was more beautiful than his own, Steamed Bun's happy mood disappeared, and he lowered his head pitifully. Blue Skinny, Mushroom. However, Shi didn't have time to care about Steamed Bun, because Yang Yi took out the key and gave it to Shi. "Open the door and go in first." Yang Yi was so busy taking Tong Tong out of the safety basket that he didn't even have time to take anything. He carried him upstairs and covered him with a quilt to sleep. The little guy was sleeping soundly, and the jolting of going up and down the stairs in his father's arms didn't wake him up. "Papa, I'm hungry." She saw her father coming downstairs, so she ran over and shouted. Yang Yi finally understood how Murphy felt when she was at home. Without anyone's help, she had to deal with the problems of the 2 children. It was really a bit of a headache. He hadn't brought the other things in the car back yet, and she was saying that she was hungry again. If it were another father, he would probably yell at his daughter, "Now you know that you're hungry?" Who didn't want to go home before and insisted on playing bubble ball. Of course, Yang Yi wouldn't do that. He still smiled patiently, reached out and rubbed Shi's little head, and said, "Okay, wait a minute. Papa will make lunch for you right away." Yang Yi's movements were still very nimble. He took the things in the car back and put them in the side hall first. Anyway, they were Tong Tong's things, so they didn't need to be cleaned up for the time being. They would be eyesores if they weren't cleaned up later. The time to prepare lunch was very tight, but Yang Yi was not careless at all. Yang Yi always strived for perfection when it came to food. He quickly picked out a lot of ingredients from the fridge. He already knew what he was going to cook for lunch. Among them, the fish balls, squid, sea cucumber, egg skin, and other ingredients were used to make the three delicacies soup, while the okra and fungus were used to stir-fry a vegetarian dish. In addition, Yang Yi chopped the meat stuffing, added corn, peas, and other ingredients, and used the shiitake mushroom as the base to make a mushroom meat dish. Shi and her father ate one dish, one meat, and one soup. This lunch was not sloppy at all. What's more, with Yang Yi's culinary skills, even a simple dish could be made at the level of a hotel chef. It looked, smelled, and tasted good. The thick white three-delicacies soup was sprinkled with a little green onion. Okra stir-fried with wood ear. The black wood ear was dotted with fresh green okra that had been cut into sections and revealed yellow seeds. Although the mushroom meat was dark in color, the rich fragrance that assailed her nose also made Cece's mouth water. Yang Yi scooped rice for Shi. Seeing her pick up a piece of okra, he asked with a smile, "Is it good?" "It's so delicious." She held the chopsticks in her mouth and smiled with her eyes curved. The little girl was very active. She got up, stepped on the chair, picked up a piece of okra, and extended it to her father. "Papa, try it too." "Haha, good." "Papa, try it too." It's delicious." "Hurry up and eat. You're starving." "Yes, it's so late for dinner today." After lunch, it was already past 2 in the afternoon. Shi, who was used to taking a nap, finally couldn't take it anymore. When her father was washing the dishes, her head tipped off and she dozed off. "Let's go upstairs and sleep." Yang Yi put the doll that Shi was holding in the living room on the first floor. He carried the other luggage and coaxed Shi upstairs to sleep. Yang Yi still had to wash the newly bought doll, dry it, and leave it at home for Shi to play with. However, Yang Yi didn't have time to care about this. He still had a lot of things to do. The downstairs returned to silence, but after a while, Steamed Bun came out of nowhere. Behind him was a British Shorthair with a round head and body. If Yang Yi was next to him, he would definitely recognize that it was Xiao Guai. Steamed Bun led Xiao Guai and the two little guys jumped onto the sofa in the living room and surrounded the golden dog doll. The dog doll was lying on the sofa, obediently, motionless. Its plastic eyes were also staring blankly in front of it. Pfft! Steamed Bun snorted, as if he was very dissatisfied with it. Where did this flirtatious dog come from? Ugly and smelly? Indeed, Steamed Bun didn't smell like a dog at all. It was a little smelly. It wasn't like Shi and Tong, which were delicious. However, it wasn't ugly. Steamed Bun was envious of its beautiful fur. How could it be so long, so soft, so beautiful? Steamed Bun bared his teeth at the dog unhappily. However, he was only pretending to be fierce. Steamed Bun was a timid dog. He didn't have the guts to bite his little master's new pet. However, the new pet did not pay any attention to it and maintained its original appearance. Xiao Guai didn't have such concerns. It first curiously stretched out a front paw and tentatively scratched the dog's fur. No reaction. It touched it again, and there was still no reaction. Wasn't this cowardly look just like Steamed Bun when he first came? He. This time, Xiao Guai became bolder. It slapped the dog doll with its paw and moved it to the side. Steamed Bun was overjoyed. He wagged his tail as if he was cheering for Xiao Guai. How could a cat bully it? Even Steamed Bun wasn't so cowardly. Xiao Guai became excited. It bared its teeth and jumped onto the dog doll's back. It pounced on it with its front legs. Look at my beautiful kitty punch. Left hook. Right hook. Just like that, the dog doll was bullied silently. It seemed like a tragedy was about to happen. Suddenly, Steamed Bun and Xiao Guai's ears perked up. Xiao Guai also subconsciously stopped what it was doing. Wah! Wah! Tong Tong's drowsy cries came from upstairs. It's over. Are we going to be discovered? Steamed Bun and Xiao Guai looked at each other. Xiao Guai turned around and ran. It's none of my business. Xiao Guai jumped off the sofa and disappeared around the corner of the stairs in the blink of an eye. This agile jumping posture didn't give off the feeling of being fat at all. Steamed Bun was dumbfounded. He stared blankly at Xiao Guai's disappearing figure. He then looked at the dog doll that had been bullied. Fortunately, the quality of the doll wasn't bad. After being bullied by Xiao Guai, only the position was a little crooked and the fur was a little messy. F***CK. Is Steamed Bun the scapegoat? Steamed Bun panicked. He turned his head around and didn't know what to do. Fortunately, there was movement upstairs, but no one came down for a long time. Steamed Bun finally figured it out. He tucked his tail between his legs and ran away. When he returned upstairs, Shishi had just fallen asleep. Yang Yi heard Tong Tong crying next door. It seems that I won't be able to sleep this afternoon. Yang Yi thought. Why are you crying? Why are you crying when you wake up? Yang Yi closed the door of the master bedroom so that Shishi could sleep peacefully. He hurriedly ran to the guest bedroom and coaxed Tong Tong. Yang Yi thought that Tong Tong was crying when he woke up. Shishi was also like this in the past. She didn't have enough sleep, so she cried to her heart's content. If that was the case, he should be fine after he coaxed her. Mom. Mom. However, Tong Tong started to twist in his father's arms. He cried and looked for his mother. He didn't want his father. He felt more comfortable in his mother's arms. No matter how Yang Yi coaxed him, it was useless. The little guy started to cry. He even stuffed a pacifier into his mouth. This was a trick that he hadn't used in a long time. He threw away Tong Tong's pacifier and continued to cry. Yang Yi really had a headache when he saw Tong Tong's snot and tears. He was still being unreasonable. This was a real challenge. Chapter 936. Grumpy after waking up, coupled with the panic of not seeing her mother for a day, Xiao Sume cried so much that she almost overturned the entire villa. No matter how Yang Yi coaxed or explained, it was useless. The little guy cried until his eyes were swollen. When she woke up in the afternoon, Tong Tong was still crying. The little girl kindly stayed by her father's side, but she could only watch. She had no way to console him. Why is little brother crying? Mom came back at night. She asked her father in confusion. Unfortunately, she could only add to her father's troubles and was of no help at all. In the end, Yang Yi had no choice but to come up with a strange move. He carried Tong Tong downstairs and turned on the TV. The TV in his house was connected to the internet and could play online videos. Yang Yi pulled up the video of Murphy's interview with Xixin and played it on the TV. Look, isn't this Mom? Yang Yi pointed at the TV and whispered to Tong Tong, who was tired from crying and resting in his father's arms for a while. No matter what her father said, it was useless. Tong Tong heard his mother's voice from the TV. He could not help but raise his head and look for his mother with his red eyes. 15 minutes later, the wind and rain stopped. Yang Yi made a bottle of warm milk and handed it to Tong Tong. There were still tears on the little guy's eyelashes, and his eyes were still red, but he was staring at the TV. To be exact, he was looking at his mother on the TV. He was still holding the milk bottle and sucking on it. He was probably tired from crying and used up a lot of energy. He had to eat and drink to make up for it. The way Tong Tong sucked on the milk seriously was like a living advertisement. He gave people the illusion that the milk was delicious. Cece, who was watching from the side, felt hungry. She ran over and asked her father to make a cup for her. Papa, little brother is not watching the real Mom. That's just TV, the little girl said as she stood beside her father and watched him make milk. Sure, let's not tell him the truth. Yang Yi smiled, raised a finger, and winked at Shi. Hee, all right. I won't tell my brother. Shi found this amusing and giggled. Yang Yi did not tell Murphy at first, so she only found out about Tong Tong's antics in the afternoon after she finished filming the show in the evening. She did not have time for dinner with Luo Xian, so she explained the situation to Luo Xian and rushed back from Shanghai. Tong Tong was not as eager to see his mother as he was in the afternoon. The heartless little guy seemed to have forgotten how much he missed his mother. However, in his mother's arms, he was amused by her and giggled. After a while, he struggled to get down and staggered over to show his mother his new robot toy. Yang Yi explained to Murphy, "Actually, he was fine. After watching your video, he stopped making trouble. If I had known this would happen, I would have used this trick when he started crying. You don't know how sad I felt when he cried himself hoarse. Now you know how important I am, right?" Murphy was still complaining about Tong Tong's crying, so Yang Yi's voice was still a little hoarse. Now, she was proudly claiming credit from Yang Yi. "Of course, you're important. You're the most important person in our family." Yang Yi smiled and pinched Murphy's nose. "We can't lose anyone in our family." After recording Jixin interview, Murphy's official album release was in the last few days. For Murphy's fans, this was the big and exciting moment they had been waiting for 2 years. It was about to arrive. For this day, Jia Siyuan went from a young girl to a wife and from a wife to a proud mother. Do you still remember the girl who met her boyfriend at the music store because of Murphy's first dream? Do you still remember the female fan who shared her story and showed off her wedding ring at Murphy's first fan meeting? 2 years later, Jia Siyuan also had her own child. However, her love for Murphy did not decrease. Over the years, Mo Fei had released a lot of new songs one after another, but they were all released in the form of singles. Singles were not as good as albums. Jia Siyuan had been looking forward to Mo Fei's new album. He even hoped that Mo Fei would come back and hold a concert as soon as possible. Even though she was a mother and understood Murphy's difficulties, as a fan, she was still a little selfish. Fortunately, the happy moment was about to arrive. In the last few days, Phoebe Studios' official micro-broadcasting was holding a repost lottery every day. As long as you reposted the micro-broadcasting that revealed the new album, you would have a chance to be selected and win a valuable prize. Jia Siyuan was not very interested in the prize. In addition, there were too many reposts every day, so it was difficult to win. She was more concerned about micro-broadcasting itself. What new album secret was revealed today? Jia Siyuan's husband asked with a smile when he saw Jia Siyuan sitting on the sofa with one hand holding her son and the other holding a tablet to browse Weibo. He was also a die-hard fan of Murphy. "It's not out yet. I'm looking at it from a few days ago." Jia Siyuan laughed. Yesterday, the official Weibo announced that Murphy's new album's title was Want to Say But Stop. The day before yesterday, the official Weibo announced the album's cover photo. The most interesting thing was the name, Want to Say But Stop. In the micro-broadcasting's comment section, many fans had already started guessing activities or improvising. Want to say but stop. It should have the same meaning as want to say but stop. Generally, such words should be used to describe people who have some unspeakable difficulties. Could it be that Murphy's album is about complaining? No way. According to Yang Yi and Murphy's character, shouldn't they release another album to abuse PDA? Upstairs. Is the village connected to the internet? Previously, producer Jin Ming revealed that Murphy's album is mainly a sad style. Want to say but stop. Tonight, I was drunk and wanted to go home to sleep, but you kept talking to me. What else do you want? Don't I need to rest? Haha, upstairs is too talented. You can even explain it like this. There were indeed many talents in the comment section. However, Jia Siyuan was more concerned about the new revelation that was about to be released today. She refreshed it again in a while. It finally came out. Hubby, it's a video. Come and take a look. Jia Siyuan exclaimed excitedly. Her husband was originally reading on the side, but now he couldn't help but come over. The two of them watched the latest revelation video together. The video was a surveillance video of the recording studio, which was pieced together from 2 videos. From the video, the audience saw that Mo Fei, who was in the recording room, was wiping her tears, and Yang Yi, who was outside, said something into the microphone. Jin In-ming seemed to want to give them some space and left the recording room by himself. Soon, Murphy came out of the recording studio, and the video was switched to the surveillance in the monitoring room. She threw herself into Yang Yi's arms with a heartbroken look. Yang Yi comforted her, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "What's going on?" Jia Siyuan and her husband were stunned. This video was completely like a silent play. Moreover, there were no subtitles. The plot was all guesswork. "It doesn't feel like a public display of affection," Jia Siyuan said strangely. "Well, I don't think so either. You see Murphy crying so sadly. What made her cry so badly? It also doesn't look like it's Yang Yi's fault. If Yang Yi had provoked Murphy, she wouldn't have run into Yang Yi's arms to cry," Jia Siyuan's husband guessed. It must be a problem with this album. Isn't it supposed to be the new album's reveal?" Jia Siyuan laughed. "Although it's not good to gloat, seeing Murphy crying so sadly, I can't wait to hear her new album." Chapter 937. Unlike before Murphy's new album was officially released, no songs were leaked through variety shows or other channels. Therefore, a series of unveiling activities succeeded in whetting the appetite of all the fans. On the day of the release of the new album, many fans blocked the door of the music store early, wanting to buy this new album called Still Wanting to Speak as soon as possible. Jia Siyuan stayed in the car to take care of the children, and her husband went to line up. But while they were still waiting in line and looking forward to it, some music critics who were also looking forward to it had already gotten the album through their familiar music stores. For example, Mr. Li Shijian, he had been waiting for this album since the day Murphy released the new album. Unfortunately, the unromantic Phoebe Studio did not take the initiative to send the album to the music critics. Yang Yi and Murphy were not worried about the sales of their works, and they would not deliberately please the music critics. This approach was still somewhat unique. It was as cold as a mobile phone manufacturer releasing a new mobile phone and not taking the initiative to invite some big names in the technology world and review video writers to watch. But Li Shijian could still understand and appreciate Yang Yi's approach. He had always thought that good works were not delivered to him, but discovered by him personally. Therefore, Li Shijian also got Murphy's new album early in the morning through his distant relatives who opened a music store. Back in his office, Li Shijian turned on two cameras, one near and one far away, and aimed them at himself and his hand respectively. He was preparing to record a music review video. It was worth mentioning that in the past, Li Shijian used to publish his music review reports through blogs, media columns, and other channels. But after coming into contact with micro-broadcasting this year, Li Shijian gradually shifted his position to micro-broadcasting in addition to writing media columns. In order to stand out from the new media, Li Shijian had to make innovations. He chose to use the same method as others to review mobile phones. He recorded his review video of himself opening the package and listening to the new album for the first time, and posted it on micro-broadcasting. The first listen review was not very accurate. He would also post the follow-up detailed reviews of each song in the form of a long text. But what surprised Li Shijian was that his review video was actually more popular than his careful text and text reviews. Many of his new fans had even started to follow his microstream because of the interesting reviews he had posted. Since this was the case, Li Shijian, who had always been more serious, focused more on the first listen review. He tried to be impartial, and not as rough as the initial review. At the same time, in the editing of the video, he tried his best to cut out the redundant parts to ensure that the video was perfect, so that fans could find their favorite songs through his review videos. What Li Shijian didn't know was that if it wasn't for the fact that live streaming websites were not popular yet, his entire review process could have been broadcasted live and there would be more people watching. In the information age, time was of the essence. Li Shijian was also competing with the other music critics in terms of speed. He adjusted the camera, lights, headphones and other equipment, and then officially began the recording. First, everyone's most favorite part, opening the package. Li Shijian's slender fingers, which could play the piano, scratched the air under the close-up camera. He looked very excited. Then, his hand reached out to the plastic film on the album. There was a saying in the mobile phone review industry, "Tearing the film feels better than XXX." This saying was a bit vulgar, but it was not coarse. The moment the film was torn, the film was taken away from the surface of the object. With a flick of his hand, it felt very wonderful. Many fans also liked to watch Li Shijian tear the film, even if it was only for a few seconds. It can be seen that Phoebe Studio put a lot of effort into the packaging of the album. I really like their minimalistic packaging style. They used a black matte material, and the surface is very simple. The information given is only the album title, Murphy's name, and a print of her back under a street lamp in the snow. They did not use Murphy's photo for publicity. This also reflects their strong confidence in this album. Li Shijian gently rotated and displayed the opened record case under the close-up camera. He recorded it from the front to the back. To be honest, the design style of this album is very unique. It is not like a record, but more like a work of art. But I really like it. With this design and this print, I think the value of this album has exceeded its selling price. Li Shijian was full of praise. He finally opened the shell, pointed to some information recorded on the main page, and joked, "It seems that I was right. This picture was drawn by Yang Yi. He is not only a musician, but also an artist who is delayed by music." Of course, this was a music album. Li Shijian only gave a brief introduction, and soon entered the more important song listening session. He put the album into the professional playback equipment on the other side of his desk, and then put on the headphones. Now let's listen to the song. Again, the video here will not play any original sound. If you want to listen to the music of this album, you can go to the physical store or the Sahara online mall to buy Murphy's new album, Want to Say Something. Of course, friends who have already bought it can put on your headphones, listen to the song first, and then read my review. The first song of Want to Say Something was He Doesn't Love Me, which Yang Yi first gave to Murphy to try out. Li Shijian closed his eyes and listened, but he couldn't help but twitch his eyelids and comment on the microphone. There is no doubt that this is a sad love song from the title of the song. The piano prelude at the beginning is very soft and slow, but it reminds me of another famous song by Murphy, Listen to the Sea. The beginning is also very slow, but there is a force gathering. Will this be a high-pitched song like Listen to the Sea, where one's voice is hoarse? The charm of the first listen was like this. Li Shijian knew nothing about this song, but he could take his fans to explore it together. Soon, Li Shijian overturned his judgment, because he found that although the lyrics of this song expressed the emotion of heart-wrenching, it was not a high-pitched song. Friends, I must give this song a 5-star recommendation. After listening, Li Shijian said with emotion, "Let's make a conclusion. Why do I highly recommend this song? Not only because the song itself is excellent and can hit your emotional weakness, but also because of Mo Fei's voice. I want to use the word emotional to describe it. Clarity and cleanliness were the quality of her voice. She was born with this quality. But what was rare was that Mo Fei showed her emotional side in the emotional interpretation of this song. She didn't show enough sadness or heart-wrenching. In fact, I think the lyrics of this song are already heart-wrenching, but Murphy sang it freely. She can let you feel her sadness, but also let you feel her reason. It seems that she is on the verge of losing control, but she doesn't step into the abyss. This kind of emotional voice is very comfortable to listen to, and it is easy to resonate." Li Shijian said a lot excitedly, "Friends who haven't heard the song may not be able to feel it personally, but I still suggest that everyone listen to it. I believe that you will feel the same as me." After calming down, Li Shijian said with emotion, "I didn't expect that the first song could let me easily give a 5-star rating. Yang Yi's lyrics and music and Murphy's wonderful interpretation are really a match made in heaven. I am also looking forward to the next 12 songs. Yes, 12 songs, 2 of which are repeated. It is said that there are 2 versions in Mandarin and Cantonese." Chapter 938. In the Zhongnan area, there had always been a custom of catching the Zhou dynasty. It was said that this custom originated from the Wu Kingdom during the Three Kingdoms era. However, this custom was not only present in Jiangnan province. Yang Yi's hometown, Anqing, also had the same custom. In the past, Wudayaku village, which had little communication with the outside world, paid extra attention to traditional customs. As a matter of fact, Yang Yi, who originally did not plan to make a big fuss, had already received a set of fetching objects from Dong Yu-yi. Moreover, Dong Yu-yi had also repeatedly reminded Yang Yi over the phone that he must do a good job in the fetching ceremony. She also had to tell her what the child caught in the end so that she could take it to pray to her ancestors. It could be said that there was a certain degree of superstition. However, since the elderly valued it so much, Yang Yi also discussed with Murphy to organize a small ceremony for Tong Tong. Tong Tong's birthday was at the end of November. When he turned 1 year old, Murphy's new album would be released. However, Murphy did not go to work that day. Instead, she held a press conference in advance to announce her return. After Tong Tong's birthday, she set out to promote her new album. That night, after eating the cake, Yang Yi began to arrange the items for catching the Zhou dynasty on the carpet in the living room. She crossed her legs and crawled on the sofa next to him, looking curiously. It had to be said that the happiest person on Tong Tong's birthday was Shi. This was because Tong Tong did not understand the meaning of a birthday and did not understand the joy of opening presents. Moreover, he could not enjoy the delicious birthday cake. Although Murphy fed the little guy a little bread, it was not as delicious as the sweet and delicious cream. In the end, the benefits that Tong Tong could not enjoy were all enjoyed by Shi. Therefore, Shi was as happy as if it was her birthday that night. Her little belly was full of delicious cake, and she could eat until she could not eat anymore. After eating the cake, the little girl was so full that she could not sit down. She could only move around and crawl to digest the food. At the same time, she also looked at the items that her father had arranged for catching the Zhou dynasty. "Papa, what are these? It looks like a wooden doll." She asked curiously. A few days ago, she had already learned from her father about the concept of catch weekly. However, this was the first time she had seen the items needed to catch weekly. Yang Yi arranged all the items in a circle and was now adjusting the distance between the items to ensure that they were well arranged. Seeing Shi's curiosity, he smiled and explained, "These are made of wood. However, the original image was of other ancient objects, and they all have very complicated meanings." Yang Yi picked up a dragon-shaped seal that looked like a stone lion and explained to Shi, "Take this for example. It's called the official star seal. Look, it's in the shape of a dragon. In ancient times, the dragon represented the emperor and imperial power, so it symbolized power and status. If my brother catches this, it means that he has the possibility of becoming an official. If he's destined to be an official, he'll have a prosperous career." She took it curiously and played with it in her hands. The official star seal was not big, but the workmanship was very delicate. The dragon statue was so lifelike that even the nostrils and whiskers could be seen clearly. Of course, it was not only this. Every item was the same. They were small in size and light in weight, so that children who had just reached 1 year old could catch them. The items carved from wood were polished very smoothly. Probably because they had been used for a long time, there was a layer of warm and translucent coating on the surface of these items, which was very comfortable to touch. Coupled with the original darker color, these items looked like antiques. In order to understand the meaning of these items, Yang Yi had specially researched them. In addition to understanding the knowledge that he and she talked about, Yang Yi also discovered that there were many problems with the items that modern people randomly made. For example, they used items like abacuses, magazines, rulers, and so on. Not to mention that children might not be able to catch them. The different colors, sizes, and shapes of these items were also a kind of interference for children. Therefore, after discussing with Murphy, they decided to use the items that Dong Yue had sent them. Although they were a little outdated, at least they could symbolically play with the items and see what Tong Tong would choose in the end. Yang Yi explained to Shi patiently, and Murphy quickly carried Tong Tong, who had just finished showering and changed into new clothes, downstairs. Let's catch Chow Chow. Let's see what our Chow Chow will do in the future. Do you want to be an awe-inspiring general? Or do you want to be a great musician like Mama and Papa? Mo Fei smiled and put little Mommy in the middle of these objects. Yang Yi let Murphy be the host, while he held a camera and recorded this small ceremony with a smile. What will little brother choose? Cece giggled and jumped around at the side. Although there were no scenes for young girls today, Shishi was a little drama expert, so it was necessary for her to join in the fun and steal the show. Yes, my brother, what will you choose? Look around first. Murphy held Tong Tong, who was still confused, and pointed at the items so that he could look at them one by one. This is a spinning top, and this is a Lubon dough. Shishi introduced the items to her brother enthusiastically. Her father had explained to her just now, so Shishi remembered most of the items, even though she could not say them correctly. Oh, this is a book, right? For example, Shishi could not remember the name of this item, so she turned her head and asked her father for help. This is called the Tsongjie bamboo slip. Tsongjie was the creator of our ancient language, Yang Yi added with a smile. However, after looking around, Cece seemed to be in high spirits, while little Momo didn't seem to have any intention of catching one. Perhaps he was also a little sleepy, sitting in the middle of a circle of objects, sometimes looking at his father, sometimes looking at his mother. Tong Tong's confused eyes seemed to be saying, "What do you want me to do?" "Oh, my brother, catch one." She could not wait any longer. She put her hands on the carpet beside her, and like a little tiger, she jumped over and blocked Tong Tong's line of sight. Little rascal thought that his sister wanted to play with him, and his sleepiness instantly dissipated. He opened his small mouth, and as he laughed, he also leaned forward, just like his sister. "Aya, I'm asking you to choose one. Let's see what you'll do in the future." Cece pouted and pointed at the circle of items. "I'm not asking you to learn from me." Murphy and Yang Yi looked at each other, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She reached out and pulled Shishi. "Don't influence your brother's choice. It's more useful for him to choose by himself." However, at this moment, Tong Tong finally acted. He casually grabbed 2 items from the ground. Yang Yi's eyes were sharp. He saw that one was a donut-like bell, and the other was the Hongya music chimes that Murphy wanted Tong Tong to pick up. The former symbolized a kind heart and medical skills. The latter, needless to say, meant that the child would be multi-talented and be good at singing and dancing. However, Yang Yi and Murphy did not expect that Tong Tong did not care about what he picked up and did not pick anything. If he insisted that he pick something, then the one Tong Tong picked was his sister, who knew how to play with him. Perhaps Tong Tong misunderstood that she wanted him to give those items to her. When he saw his sister being pulled away by his mother, Tong Tong anxiously grabbed 2 items that were the least painful to his hands. He got up from the ground and walked over to his sister while babbling. "Sister." Tong Tong smiled happily and reached out his 2 small hands to Shishi. Chapter 939. Tong Tong gave his chosen gift to his sister. Shishi took it in a daze, unable to react. This scene fell into the eyes of Yang Yi and Murphy, and it became their laughing point for the whole night. However, because little Momo was still too young, he couldn't understand the deeper meaning of birthdays. Just like that, the little guy's first birthday passed so easily. According to a certain definition, Tong Tong could still be considered a baby before he turned one. Now that he had passed his first birthday, Tong Tong was no longer a baby that could be manipulated by others. The next day, Tong Tong, who had officially become a baby, began to face a new challenge. His mother was on a business trip again, and this time, she would be gone for 2 days. This time, Tong Tong would not only not see his mother for 2 days, but he also had to face the terrible crisis of food shortage. Of course, Murphy had just boarded a plane to Beijing, so Tong Tong did not know about this problem. The real difficult moment had yet to come. The little guy was still happily rolling around with the steamed stuffed buns. At the end of November, after a cold wave, the northern part of the country was covered in ice and snow. In the whole country, only Qionghai Island and Yazhou, the southernmost part of the country, were still as warm as summer. In this beautiful and warm tropical seaside city, there was a person who actually needed more warmth in her heart. Zhong Zhanzhan, the emotional girl who had attended Murphy's concert. When Zhong Zhanzhan attended Mo Fei's concert, she was still a third-year student at the Shanghai University of Technology. Now, 2 years had passed and Zhong Zhanzhan had yet to graduate. However, she had gone to a better university in Yongcheng to pursue her master's degree. Actually, Zhong Zhanzhan wished that she had not come to Yongcheng. It was not that she did not like Yongcheng, but if she had stayed in Shanghai, she would not have met her boyfriend who had just broken up with her. She would not have had such a great time in love, and would not have been tortured badly when breaking up with him. She had avoided the bustling Singles' Day, but she did not wait until the 31st of December, when they had agreed to spend the New Year's Eve together half a year ago. Let's not talk about the past anymore. Right now, Zhong Zhanzhan just wanted to heal herself. Chu Fongfong, her old best friend for so many years, had recommended her to come to Yazhou, a beautiful city with summer-like seasons. Unfortunately, Chu Fongfong was also studying for a master's degree, and she was busy with an experimental project with her supervisor, so she didn't have time to accompany her. However, it was fine to play alone. During the day, Zhong Zhanzhan wore a swimsuit and went to the beach to step on the waves. At night, she wandered around various food stalls. The simple and comfortable time in Shanghai gradually made her forget the unforgettable time when they broke up. Of course, if she did not use micro-broadcasting, this healing journey would have been perfect. However, after returning to the hotel at night, Zhong Zhanzhan, who was a little bored, still turned on the micro-broadcasting. A song that sad people shouldn't listen to? Seeing this opening sentence, Zhong Zhanzhan hesitated for a moment, but a person's field of vision was very wide. Even if she was still hesitating whether to continue watching or not, she had already glanced at the content of the micro-broadcasting. Li Shijian was a music critic that Zhong Zhanzhan was more interested in. Zhong Zhanzhan did not expect that when he introduced Murphy's new album, he would first advise people who were in a state of emotional distress not to listen to Murphy's new songs. Is he talking about Murphy? She released a new album? Zhong Zhanzhan was stunned for a moment and stared blankly at the micro-broadcasting. She used to be a hardcore fan of Murphy and Yang Yi. However, after falling in love, she no longer paid attention to the entertainment gossip. She spent all day with her boyfriend in the library, shopping, and stargazing. How could she still care about chasing stars? What's more, Murphy had not had any big news. Zhong Zhanzhan did not know that her best friend Chu Fongfong had already lined up to buy Murphy's new album yesterday, but because of the song category of the album, Chu Fongfong did not dare to tell Zhong Zhanzhan about it. A sad person shouldn't listen to songs, but why did Teacher Li give all the songs 5 stars? Zhong Zhanzhan couldn't help but click on the video and watch Li Shijian's demo video. In the video, she couldn't hear Murphy's songs, but she could get a glimpse of them from Li Shijian's comments and the names of the songs. 1. He doesn't love me. 2. I'm blown by the cold wind for you. 3. If this is love, this album is very sad. Zhong Zhanzhan's rational mind told her, listen to Teacher Li's advice. Don't make yourself unhappy during the healing stage. But her emotional mind said, how can you not support Murphy's new album? Abuse it, abuse it. After listening to it, just cry to your heart's content. Zhong Zhanzhan was really an emotional girl. So, regardless of whether it was worth it or not, she resolutely logged on to a music website and bought and downloaded all the songs in Murphy's new album in the form of singles. She wanted to listen to the songs one by one. There was no single loop. The album had 13 songs, 2 of which had the same name, but were in Mandarin and Cantonese. Zhong Zhanzhan sat on the balcony of the hotel room, looked at the silent night, and listened silently. In Murphy's different styles of singing, under Zhong Zhanzhan's calm appearance, her mood was like a roller coaster, rising and falling. I will try to let go of the past, no matter how beautiful it was in the past, and I will try not to think of how you surrounded me with love, that deep feeling. The second song, I'm blown by the cold wind for you. Zhong Zhanzhan had forgotten how excellent Murphy's singing was in Li Shijian's video. She was infected by the bleak self-persuasion in the lyrics. In the early days of breaking up, didn't she also think of the scene of them sticking together every day when they were passionately in love? If she could really let go, how could she be trapped by love? How could she painfully need to escape from that city in order to heal? The third song was, If This Is Love. This song completely ignited the sadness in her heart. It turns out that the last kiss was so cold. You can only tacitly accept that I'm going to be cut off and watch you leave. She suddenly felt that the lyrics were all about her. The appearance of another girl made him feel unfaithful. Although they didn't fall out in the end, and there was no melodramatic catching the adulterer, and they just negotiated calmly, he made a decision, and she could only fulfill it. Is this love? No, it's not. She didn't want to fulfill it, she didn't want blessings. Why didn't you choose me? Zhong Zhenjin hugged her knees and curled up on the sofa on the balcony. She suddenly felt so wronged and her heart was so cold. If the third song made Zhong Zhenjin's mood a little hysterical, and she even wanted to find that person and question him, then the fourth song, with its calm melody and calm lyrics, made her state of mind return to the peace before listening to the song. Hey, I really miss you. Outside the window, it's starting to rain again. My eyes are dry, and I feel like crying. Peace didn't mean that she wasn't sad. Outside the balcony, the night was quiet and it wasn't raining, but when she heard this, she couldn't help but shed 2 lines of hot tears. In fact, she also knew that everything in the past couldn't be returned, but she still couldn't walk out of it. Just like the lyrics, she understood that, if it weren't for you, there would be no past, I wouldn't be sad, or if it wasn't for that experience, what's the pity? But after losing love, she completely couldn't find her previous way of life and couldn't find her free and easy self. If it weren't for him, she would have already lost herself. Even though she didn't want to love anymore, Zhong Zhenjin still wanted to know, do you miss you like I do? Maybe not. Chapter 940. If you think that the new record that Yang Yi gave Murphy was made up of so many sad songs, was just pure sadness, dragging the audience step by step into an emotional whirlpool that they couldn't escape, then you are looking down on Yang Yi too much. After Zhong Zhenjin experienced the heartbreak of the 7th song, The Most Familiar Stranger, in the following songs, she began to understand how to think calmly after the pain and how to calmly face the failed love of the past. What I miss is that we can talk about anything. I miss dreaming together. I miss the impulse to love you after an argument. Yes, thinking about it carefully, wasn't it just the beautiful period of the past that she was sad and reluctant to part with? Because that period of love was so blissful that she lost the courage to give up. But in fact, a lingering nightmare had been left in her heart. Just as the 8th song, I Miss, sang, self-esteem often drags people down and twists and turns love. I pretend to understand because I'm afraid that the truth is too naked. It's worse to be embarrassed than to lose. Self-esteem made Zhong Zhenjin unable to believe the fact that he didn't love her that much anymore. She would rather plead with him to stay and drag herself to the same place than tear apart the last bit of luck to laugh at the truth of him being a scumbag. Of course, Zhong Zhenjin had calmed down now. This song made her understand that she didn't want him to come back, but she just missed the beauty of the past. Then why was she still so stubborn? Zhong Zhenjin found that she really fell in love with Murphy's album because it understood her emotional changes too well. The 9th song gave her the song, I Started to Understand. After calming down, she did begin to understand her situation and her emotional situation. Zhong Zhenjin listened to the song with a smile. Shaking my dream awake, announcing that happiness won't come again, forgiving with a sad smile, and overturning. Sometimes, she was still dreaming of the past. Even when she was feeling sorry for herself, she was thinking about how beautiful he and she would have been if that girl hadn't appeared. But now, it was time to wake up from the dream. Happiness wouldn't come again. Shouldn't her past be overturned? Zhong Zhenjin really liked the lyrics of this song, especially the line, yesterday was still good, but tomorrow is yours. I'm starting to understand, happiness is a choice. Especially after Murphy's lazy moans. Ah. Yay yay yay. The corners of Zhong Zhenjin's mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly as she thought to herself, isn't this how it should be? Why do I still have to face it while weeping endlessly? Why don't I look ahead? Leave the past to yesterday and leave tomorrow to yourself. Isn't it good to choose happiness? The 10th song was a Cantonese song. Although Zhong Zhanjin had been a graduate student in Yongqing for more than a year, she still didn't know much about Cantonese. She could only listen to the lyrics of this song. However, just like how Murphy sang this song with a brisk rhythm and a gentle voice, although this song sang about the nostalgia after breaking up, it didn't have the lingering feeling of breaking up. Zhong Zhanjin read the free and easy taste in this song. Wasn't that right? Looking at the lyrics, although there were a lot of words like pity and reminiscence, the whole song emphasized the irreversible separation. It was as if someone wanted to stay and someone wanted to go far away. It was a free and easy farewell. Now, the deep gaze engraved the beauty of you and me in the memory. There was no need for romance. Zhong Zhanjin didn't know if her interpretation was right. Anyway, she felt that Murphy, who sang this song, was really free and easy. Moreover, she also liked the classical charm of the song's lyrics. Although it still couldn't get rid of the shackles of the vernacular, it always gave people a kind of elegant and fresh temperament. With such lyrics, how could people be willing to immerse themselves in the sadness of the past? If it wasn't a Cantonese song, Zhong Zhanjin would think that this song was the best out of the first 10 songs she listened to. Of course, even if it was a Cantonese song, Zhong Zhanjin still felt that this song was the best Cantonese song she had ever heard. Mo Fei's singing was so good. Then again, Zhong Zhanjin listened to so many songs in the beginning. There were still 2 songs that she hadn't listened to yet. She also chose her favorite song. It was none other than the 7th song, The Most Familiar Stranger. Maybe it was because of the abuse? Let's not go too far. Zhong Zhanjin began to listen to the 11th song. What surprised her was that this song, Say Goodbye Properly, was a duet between a man and a woman. What made Zhong Zhanjin feel very strange was that this song was a duet between Yang Yi and Murphy. Was it strange for Yang Yi and Murphy to duet? Of course not. If it wasn't for Yang Yi, Zhong Zhanjin couldn't think of which male singer Murphy would choose to duet with. Could it be because this song wasn't good? No, Yang Yi and Mo Fei's singing of this song was too beautiful. Whether it was Yang Yi being the lead singer and Murphy harmonizing, or Murphy being the lead singer and Yang Yi harmonizing, the two's cooperation was so perfect that it could be said to be seamless. Moreover, the two were really top experts in singing. When the harmonizing harmonies were combined, it gave people goosebumps. That refreshing feeling was like drinking a big mouthful of ice-cold soda during the hottest days of summer. Especially the lyrics, which were very interesting. The harmonizing lyrics echoed the main tone, just like the duet of a Xiangxi love song. Let me give you 2 interesting examples. For example, Yang Yi sang, When Love is Too Deep and Fate is Too Shallow, and Murphy sang, When You Leave My World. Then, Yang Yi sang, At Least Say Goodbye Properly, and Murphy sang, How to Say Goodbye Properly. The rhyming traces were not strong, and even many of the ending words were the same. However, the meaning of the lyrics was not randomly pieced together. Each sentence corresponded to the other. This way, the meaning could be linked together, and the lyrics sounded more interesting. But what Zhong Zhanjin found strange was that this song was written about being reluctant to part, but still wanting to break up. For example, I always thought that true love could last forever. Didn't this mean, can't last forever? Did it mean that they still wanted to break up? Of course, the title of the song, Say Goodbye Properly, also meant to part on good terms. But why did Zhong Zhanjin feel that she was a little flustered when Yang Yi and Murphy sang this song? Could it be that there's something wrong with your relationship? Zhong Zhanjin's heart was in a mess. One had to know that Yang Yi and Murphy's love, from the beginning, was not recognized. Later, it became a story. They had become the role models of the entertainment industry, and also became the look of love in the hearts of fans. If they broke up, Zhong Zhanjin would really not be willing to believe in love anymore. She did not care to listen to the last song and hurriedly turned on Yang Yi and Murphy's micro-broadcast. From the micro-broadcast, at least no cracks could be seen in their relationship. The latest update of Yang Yi and Murphy's micro-broadcast was yesterday. Yang Yi's micro-broadcast was a little too serious. This guy actually wrote a long article to introduce the customs of their hometown, as if he had become the cultural ambassador of Anying province. Murphy was much more interesting. She snatched Yang Yi's video and took a screenshot of Tong Tong's back as he walked toward his sister with something. She told the fans about the little guy's love for his sister. In fact, whether it was Yang Yi's serious micro-broadcast or Murphy's short story, their micro-broadcast was full of life fun, not like stars at all. Who had ever seen a singer who did not post any micro-broadcast promotion when his new album was released, but routinely showed off his baby? But Zhong Zhenzhen was still relieved. She smiled slightly. From Yang Yi and Murphy's micro-broadcast, she read that they were still in a good relationship. You have to be good and continue to love. With your happy appearance, I am still willing to believe in the beauty of love. Zhong Zhenzhen sighed faintly and blessed them in her heart. She did not have time to look at the comments below for the time being. With a swipe of her finger, she switched back to the interface of the music player. She still had one last song to listen to. Later, perhaps, after knowing how to properly say goodbye, she really did need to cry to her heart's content again. Later, I finally understood in my tears that some people, once missed, will never come back again. Tomorrow, start a new journey in life. Chapter 941. Murphy's new album, released 2 years ago, sold well on its first day and caused a lot of controversy and concern from her fans. However, Yang Yi did not have time to care about the questions from his fans on micro-broadcasting. He did not even have time to pick up his phone or open his computer to watch the micro-broadcasting. He was busy dealing with Tong Tong. Murphy went on a business trip to participate in a popularity contest. The first day was fine, and the little guy was not difficult to deal with. Since she went to school, Yang Yi could focus on taking care of him. With his father by his side, Tong Tong did not think about his mother for the time being. The crisis of crying in the afternoon was also solved by Yang Yi with the video and the milk bottle. However, Tong Tong finally started to feel uneasy when he was about to take a bath at night. Tong Tong felt that something was wrong when he did not feel his mother's embrace or drink breast milk the whole day. Why did his mother disappear again? He wanted his mother to bathe him, not his father. When Yang Yi found a change of clothes for the little guy in the cupboard, Tong Tong pouted his little mouth and took small steps to look for his mother. Look for your mother after you take a bath. Good boy, Daddy wants to bathe you and your sister together. Yang Yi picked up the little guy, who was holding onto the doorframe and trying to get out. He rubbed his little head and smiled. You want to bathe with your sister? Are you not happy? She also wanted to bathe. Yang Yi could not leave Tong Tong alone outside when he was bathing she, right? Even if the crib could temporarily trap Tong Tong and prevent him from running around, he would make more noise. I want mom, bathe. Tong Tong struggled and pouted his little mouth as he said aggrievedly. Perhaps it was due to the threat, but little Momo's language skills had been improving over the past few days. Originally, he could only use a few monosyllabic verbs, and his pronunciation was not very accurate. Now, he could actually string together some titles, and vaguely he was about to form a complete sentence with meaning. The little fellow was extremely anxious. Not only did he struggle in his father's arms, his eyes were also rapidly gathering tears. If his father hid his mother again, he would definitely cry loudly, and ask his mother to come and save him. I got it. After we bathe, we can talk to Mom on the phone. There is a big screen in Dad's study. We can project Mom on it and you can talk to her, okay? Yang Yi saw that the little guy was about to cry, so he quickly snapped his fingers and raised his voice. Tong Tong was a little surprised by his father's snap. He opened his eyes wide. Although there were tears in his eyes, they did not fall and he just looked at his father in confusion. He heard his father say, Mom, but he did not understand. Fortunately, at this time, someone came to play along with his father. She came from next door with her underwear and nightgown. She was going to let her father bathe her, but when she heard what her father said, she happily jumped up and said, Okay, Okay. Dad, I want to see Mom too. I miss her so much. Mom. Tong Tong turned his head to look at his sister for a while, then turned his head again. He blinked his eyes, as if he was trying hard to hold back his tears. He emphasized, I want Mom. Mom will be here in a while. Look, sister is so happy. Yang Yi felt that Shi's good mood might be contagious to Tong Tong, so he quickly pointed at Shi and motioned for Tong Tong to look. Shi giggled. She held her nightgown, twisted her body, and naughtily hid behind her father. Hey, you bad sister, you won't let your brother see? Yang Yi shouted. He turned around to look for Shi with Tong Tong in his arms. Cici threw her change of clothes on the sofa and ran away while giggling. However, she didn't run out. Instead, she circled around the furniture and avoided the sight of her father and brother. It was like playing hide and seek. She had a lot of fun. Yang Yi hugged Tong Tong and ran around in circles. At first, Tong Tong was a little confused, but after being infected by his sister's pleasant laughter, he could not help but turn his little head around. His little hands clung to his father's chest, sometimes to his father's left side, and sometimes to the right side of his father's shoulder. Hee, sister. The little boy was happy. He pointed at Shi, who was busy hiding behind the sofa, and called out to his father with a smile. Finally, he was appeased. With Shi playing with him, Tong Tong was finally willing to settle down. Although there were still tears in his eyes, his mood was at least cheerful. 10 minutes later, in the steamy bathroom, Yang Yi sat on a small stool and gently wiped the back of Tong Tong, who was sitting naked in a small tub. In front of him were 2 tubs of the same style, one big and one small. Tong Tong was sitting in the small tub, and the warm water only reached his belly button. However, Tong Tong was not at all settled down. He kept giggling and splashing water as he looked in his sister's direction. Shi was sitting in the big tub. The little girl was wearing a fluffy bunny ear headband on her head. It was convenient for her to tie up her long hair and prevent it from getting dirty. However, the bunny ear headband was very cute, and it attracted Tong Tong's attention. He stood up from his small tub several times, giggling, and tried to crawl to his sister's tub. He wanted to touch his sister's bunny ears. Stop fooling around, we'll be done soon. Yang Yi was busy washing the foam off Tong Tong's body. He could only press him down again and again. Cici and her brother were also having a lot of fun. There were a lot of little toys floating on the surface of the water when she was bathing. She excitedly fished out a little yellow duck from her bathtub and enthusiastically placed it in little Momo's bathtub. Brother, this is for you to play with. Shi's sweet laughter was very healing. At this moment, the cute little girl only lacked a pair of white wings to become a kind little angel. Tong Tong was very interested in the yellow duck. While he was still observing it, Shi extended her arm again and taught him how to press down on the yellow duck. Then, she let go of his hand to let it float. That was not all. Yang Yi opened the drainage hole of the small bathtub, drained the foamy dirty water, and replaced it with clean hot water for little Momo. The little guy looked at the little yellow duck that was gradually floating from the bottom of the bathtub with the rising water. He was so excited that he laughed and danced with joy. It was needless to say how happy he was. Hee, Papa, little brother is so fun. On the side, Cici was also amused by her younger brother. She turned her head with a smile and pointed at little Momo as she yelled at her father. If Yang Yi hadn't been afraid that the siblings would catch a cold and quickly wash them clean, Shi and Tong Tong would have been playing in the water for the whole night. Finally, after the bath, Yang Yi carried Tong Tong and Shi, who were wrapped in bath towels, on his shoulders. He rushed out of the bathroom as if he was fighting a war and threw them on the big bed. The wind-like speed, the feeling of being carried while running, and the fact that they were looking at each other through their father's neck made Cici and little Swanee burst into laughter. Along the way, countless joyful laughter could be heard. However, little Fuchen was a little naughty. His father had just left him on the bed and turned around to get clothes for him to wear. He couldn't wait to break free from the bath towel and get up from the bed with his butt naked. Hee. The little guy seemed to be competing to see who could get up faster. He stepped on the bed naked and kept giggling at his sister. Chapter 942. Yang Yi caught Tong Tong inadvertently exposing himself when he turned around. He quickly grabbed the towel beside him, wrapped it around the little guy, and pushed him down. Even so, this hooligan brother of his did not feel ashamed. Perhaps he thought that his father was playing with him, or perhaps he was proud of himself, but he kept laughing in bed. Shi, who was beside him, did not feel that her brother was an eyesore. The little girl was a little shy, so she wrapped herself tightly in the towel. However, she still laughed happily at her brother. Their laughter echoed each other. One big and one small, one high and one low, they were almost singing a duet. Big sister, how old are you? Do you still want Daddy to help you dress like your brother? Yang Yi pouted his lips at Shi and laughed. Mommy used to bathe you. In the future, you have to learn how to bathe by yourself. You're already a big girl, so why do you still need Daddy to make bubbles for you? Shi giggled. She wrapped herself in the blanket and rolled around like a white, fluffy worm. She even rolled around with her brother before she rolled out. After a while, the little girl stopped and said mischievously to her father, I don't want to bathe by myself. I'm still a little girl. Although she said that, she still got dressed in the end. After her father helped her brother get dressed, she went to her room to get a comb and a hairdryer so that her father could blow dry her hair. It was late at night, so there was no need to wear a hairband. However, it would be more comfortable to blow dry her wet hair. It would be easier to dry it before bed. After he was done, Yang Yi picked up Tong Tong and pulled Shi along. Let's go. Let's video chat with Mommy. When the video call was connected, Mo Fei was still wearing the costume for the performance, wearing light makeup, and sitting in the nanny van. However, even if her hairstyle and makeup were different from usual, little Momo still recognized her mother. The little guy stared at Mo Fei blankly at first, ignoring that Mo Fei was talking to Yang Yi while calling him with a smile. After staring at the screen for a long time, he finally confirmed his judgment. He turned his little head, held the milk bottle that he had been drinking happily just now with one hand, and pointed the other to the big screen, and said to his father in surprise, Mama. The little guy seemed to be telling his father, Look, Mom is here too. Yang Yi was asking about Murphy's situation. As expected, Murphy won the competition today. However, after the show ended, she still accepted an interview with the reporters under Mo Xiaojuan's arrangement, so it was a little late. I've already eaten, but I'm a little tired. I'm going to take a shower and rest. Murphy complained to Yang Yi about her hard work. There's another show tomorrow, so I have to go to Shanghai early in the morning. Actually, I'm used to this kind of life, but I've gotten used to it in the past 2 years, so I suddenly feel a little tired. Previously, his mother only appeared on the TV in the living room. Why was she here now? Moreover, she looked a little different. Tong Tong couldn't figure it out, but he didn't think too much about it. After expressing his surprise to his father, Tong Tong, who missed his mother very much, happily chatted with his mother. He didn't care if his mother was talking to him or his father. Anyway, he treated it as if she was talking to him and responded to her questions. Of course, it was mainly Murphy who asked him questions. The little guy babbled and responded in Martian language that no one could understand. He probably didn't know what he was saying either, so he was dancing with joy in his chair. Murphy had no choice but to ask Tong Tong a few times and respond to her mother's words while continuing to ask about the children's situation today. He was very obedient in the afternoon and evening. The trick he used last time was very effective. Yang Yi smiled and said, However, I still want to praise Shi. Yang Yi pulled Shi, who was originally just watching from the side, to the center of the camera and said to Murphy with a smile, Just now, when I wanted to give them a bath, Mommy was unwilling and insisted that you do it for him. Fortunately, it was Shi who made your brother happy. Otherwise, Dad really didn't know how to deal with this situation. Shi leaned in her father's arms and smiled happily. She blinked her big eyes and waited expectantly for her mother's praise. Really? It seems that my brother still likes his sister very much. Murphy, of course, was not stingy with her praise. She praised Shishi. Before Mom went on the business trip, she told Shishi that you should be obedient and help Papa take good care of your brother. I didn't expect you to really do it. Very good. Mom is very happy. Murphy was more than just praising. She was more direct and said with a smile, since you have done so well, Mom still needs to reward you. What gift do you want? Mom will bring it back to you when she comes home. I want that little sheep doll. Shishi's eyes lit up. She jumped out of her father's arms happily and said happily, Mom, are you coming back tomorrow? What little sheep doll? Murphy forgot that Yang Yi had told her about the little sheep camel doll. She asked with some doubt, I won't be back tomorrow, but I should be back in the morning of the day after tomorrow. It's just that you're in class, so it doesn't matter. At noon, I'll ask Papa to pick you up and we'll eat outside together. Little sheep doll. It's little sheep doll. She pouted her small mouth, not knowing how to explain. Dad will buy you a little sheep doll when the time comes. Don't you already have some gold coins? It's enough to exchange. This time, Mom will give you a reward. How about you let Mom give you the championship trophy she got today? Yang Yi rubbed Shishi's small head and said with a smile, just like the little red flower, you should put a trophy on your bookshelf to encourage yourself. In the future, you can be like Mom and work hard to win awards. In fact, Shishi didn't care too much about a little sheep doll. Now that she had a layer of gold coins in her small treasure chest, the rich she could ask her father for a little sheep doll at any time. Therefore, she wasn't as anxious as she was at the beginning. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed that the trophy that her father mentioned was pretty good too. She had seen the trophy that her mother had won before, and she was very envious of it. As she grew up, she gradually felt that this trophy was more beautiful than the little red flower. Okay then, I want Mom's trophy. She nodded straightforwardly. However, at this time, Tong Tong noticed that his mother had been chatting with his father and sister. He let go of the milk bottle that he was drinking and cried out with jealousy, protesting. Okay, Mom is talking to you. Murphy quickly diverted her attention. However, at this time, Murphy had also returned to the hotel. As she had to pass through the reporters on her way back, she stopped and waited until she was back in her hotel room before she hurriedly started a video call. At this time, in Zhongqing, Tong Tong had already cried because he couldn't see his mother. Although he didn't cry too intensely, Murphy's heart ached when she saw her son's tear-stained eyelashes. Murphy loved her son dearly and couldn't bear to see him cry. Therefore, she kept the video call on and chatted with Tong Tong until he was sleepy and fell asleep in his father's arms while looking at his mother's image. Yang Yi carried Tong Tong upstairs to sleep. Then, he took out his phone and reported the situation to Murphy. Okay, you should go take a shower and rest. You haven't changed your clothes yet, Yang Yi said worriedly. But I haven't chatted with you yet. Murphy's voice became gentle when she saw that her daughter and son were no longer causing trouble. She muttered to Yang Yi, You don't have to accompany me. My heart aches for you. You must be exhausted. Go take a shower and sleep. Be good. Yang Yi coaxed. But I want you to accompany me. Let's keep the video call on and you can coax me to sleep, okay? Murphy said coquettishly as she twisted her shoulders on the small screen. Okay. You can say whatever you want. Yang Yi was amused by Murphy. He chuckled and said, Go take a shower first. I'll accompany you when you come back. I'll go and see if she is asleep. Haha. Before hanging up, there was a Murphy's obedient response. Chapter 943. On the second day of her mother's absence. In the morning, She took the car driven by Lan Xian's chauffeur and went to school with Lan Xian. Since her mother was not at home, Shi's welfare treatment was also reduced a lot. She was mainly taken care of by her father. Originally, a large part of her father's energy had to be allocated to Tong Tong, who was even more troublesome. Fortunately, she was a girl. She was meticulous and sensible, so she did not bicker with her brother. Moreover, she not only did not complain, but she also happily told her friends about her brother's interesting stories at school. "My mom hasn't come back today." During the class, she said to Lu Xiaoyu, "Then, my brother didn't finish breakfast, so Papa couldn't send me to school, but he will take me home." "What should I do if your mother isn't at home? I'm not afraid when my father is on a business trip. If my mother isn't at home, I can only eat noodles with my father." Lu Xiaoyu was worried about her friend, but she was obviously a little forgetful. "No. My papa can cook. Moreover, my mom doesn't know how to cook, he. She said proudly. "Oh right. Your father can cook delicious food." Lu Xiaoyu just remembered. "By the way, little you, let me tell you. You also want your papa and mom to give you a younger brother. My younger brother is super fun." She said excitedly. "I remember your younger brother is so young." Lu Xiaoyu said. "Yes, yesterday, my papa gave us a bath. When I saw my younger brother bathing, it was so fun. He was splashing the water, and then he didn't even know how to wipe his face. His eyes were just like that. He, I was going to die of laughter." Cici winked at Lu Xiaoyu, then pulled Lu Xiaoyu's arm and laughed so hard that she stuck to her. However, only she liked her younger brother. After the third class, Chan Shiyun, who came to visit Shishi's praise of her younger brother, shouted, "Don't like your younger brother, Shishi. Let me tell you, your younger brother is very annoying." She was a little confused by Chan Shiyun's big reaction. She blinked her big eyes in confusion and asked, "Why?" "Because my younger brother is very annoying. Super annoying," Chen Shiyun said. Without waiting for Shi, Lu Xiaoyu, and Lan Xian to ask, Chen Shiyun bitterly told her miserable experience. "My younger brother loves to complain. Yesterday, I took a piece of his candy to eat, and he went to tell my dad. Then, my dad beat me up. Now, my butt still hurts." Chen Shiyun's younger brother was much older than Tong Tong, and now he could speak. "Why did you take your younger brother's candy to eat?" She asked puzzledly. However, Lan Xian next to her had a completely different doubt. "Why did your dad beat you when you took your younger brother's candy to eat? Your dad can buy another one for your younger brother, can't he?" "Because my dad said that I bullied my younger brother and was not obedient." Chen Shiyun said angrily, "I didn't bully my younger brother. He can't beat me at all, so I don't like to bully him. But he always complained, so I don't like him anymore. I don't like people who complain either." Lu Xiaoyu sighed and nodded. "There's more. My younger brother is so cute that he complained." Chen Shiyun seemed to have found an outlet to complain about her younger brother. She didn't even bother to answer Shi and Lan Xian's questions, and continued to talk about how her younger brother provoked her. "Last time, I hid the test paper, and he saw it." The whole class became a small theater for Chen Shiyun to talk about the bloody history of her struggle with her younger brother. She couldn't get a word in, so the young girl could only listen helplessly. However, her eyes blinked, as if she was thinking about something. Long before Murphy's new album was released, many record companies regarded it as a big problem. Even after knowing that Murphy had confirmed the release date of her new album, they all adjusted the release date of their artists. Finally, Mo Fei's new record came out in the eyes of her peers in the industry. Moreover, Still Want to Speak did not let them down. From the first day of the record's release, it showed heaven-defying results. Many physical record stores sold out of stock by 11 o'clock in the morning. They crazily urged the suppliers and distributors to hurry up and ship the album. Of course, the distributors weren't stupid. They knew that Murphy's album should sell well, so they made preparations early. They had prepared several warehouses of the album. After receiving a call to urge them to ship the album, they quickly arranged for it to be sent out. But no one expected that these preparations were far from enough. At noon on the third day, because of the good reputation of Rest for Words, the sales rose rapidly. The stock that was originally intended to be used for a week was sold out. The ordinary version of the album sold the fastest, but in the end, the collector's edition was sold out. It was said that many people bought the ordinary version and liked it after listening to it. The next day, they tirelessly queued up to buy the collector's edition. South China supply was in urgent need. Central China supply was in urgent need. Most of the country's supply was in a red light. The Sahara online shopping mall, which used the advantage of the internet and had sufficient reserves and supplies, was still able to maintain the sales promise that as long as the order was placed before 16 o'clock that day, it would be delivered to the door the next day. But the problem was that the album distribution in the Sahara online shopping mall was different from the album distribution in physical record stores. The distributors who signed the album distribution agreement with Phoebe Studio couldn't mobilize the Sahara online shopping mall supply. If they still couldn't make up for the supply of the album, then this group of customers who couldn't wait might turn to the Sahara online shopping mall. Some people even didn't hesitate to spend more money to buy the single of each song on music websites. This was a big loss. The distributors could only grit their teeth and transfer some of the supplies from remote areas that hadn't been sold out. They would transport them all the way back to supply the eastern region. At the same time, they would contact more record factories to increase production. Of course, these behind-the-scenes games wouldn't be exposed to the public. All they could see was the sold-out music stores. Shi's two teachers, Li Rulan and Lu Xianxian, were recommended to buy Murphy's new album by their friends. After listening to it from their friends, Li Rulan and Lu Xianxian, who liked it very much, decided to buy one for themselves and put it at home so that they could listen to it occasionally. Of course, their liking was different from Zhong Zhenjian's liking. Zhong Zhenjian was in a state of heartbreak, so she resonated emotionally with the songs in this record. Li Rulan and Lu Xianxian, two single female teachers who weren't troubled by love, liked this record purely because they thought that the songs were very good. Li Rulan liked to listen to it, while Lu Xianxian, who was lively and liked to sing and dance, wanted to learn how to sing Murphy. However, at noon, Li Rulan and Lu Xianxian, who happened to not be in the classroom to supervise the children's lunch break, made an appointment to go to the music store to buy the album. Li Rulan waited for Lu Xuanxuan's last class to end. The two of them chatted and laughed as they drove their electric scooter. First, they leisurely went for lunch. Then, they excitedly rushed to the nearest shopping mall to the school. There was a video store there. Chapter 944. Ah! What? It's sold out? When Li Rulan and Lu Xianxian came to the music store, they were not surprised to hear such news. Lu Xianxian was shocked. She turned to Li Rulan and said, "Forget it. If it's not available, we can only go to other stores to buy it. I know there's a music store in the cinema next door." However, the boss kindly told them, "There's no music store there. It's useless for you to go there. Moreover, let alone next door, even in the whole Jiang city, you can't find any music store with stock." "No way." Lu Xianxian looked at the boss suspiciously. "You're not lying to us, are you? You have to be honest when doing business, boss." "Why would I lie to you? Beauty, there's really no more. If you don't believe me, you can check online. Many places in the country were sold out yesterday." The boss complained. Li Rulan tugged at Lu Xianxian. She was worried that her best friend would anger her boss, so she quickly said, "Boss, how about this? When will the goods arrive? Can we register our phone numbers and leave a copy for us?" The boss smiled and took out a thick book. He opened it and there were several pages of Mom's phone number and name. He pointed to it and said to Li Rulan, "Of course you can register it. If the goods arrive, we'll inform you. However, Beauty, to tell you the truth, there are too many people waiting for Murphy's new album. Even if you register it, it'll probably be your turn next week." No matter what, they still had to register it. Li Rulan and Lu Xianxian walked out in a daze. They rode their electric scooters and walked slowly to the school. Along the way, Lu Xianxian sat in the back and didn't speak. Li Rulan thought that she was disappointed and in a bad mood. She was thinking about how to comfort her. However, Lu Xianxian suddenly shouted in surprise, "It's true. The internet said that many places were sold out yesterday. Now, Murphy's album sales have exceeded 6 million. If it wasn't for the lack of stock, Murphy's album sales may exceed 20 million in less than a week and get the title of Platinum Album. She was looking at her phone. Li Rulan smiled and said, "It seems that this record is really good. Look, everyone is in a hurry to buy it. The suppliers didn't expect it to sell so well." Lu Xianxian, on the other hand, was not very interested in this result. She wanted to buy a record. "Lon Lon, I say, you're not qualified to be a form teacher." Lu Xianxian poked Li Rulan's shoulder and said, "Yang Yi and Murphy's daughter is in your class. Don't you know how to ask her parents to help you get a record?" Li Rulan jumped in fright and said seriously, "If a teacher asks a student's parents for a bribe, he will be expelled from the school." "I'm not asking you to ask for a bribe. It's still the same as going to a music store. Can't we pay for it?" Lu Xianxian complained. "Why are you always so stubborn? Don't you know how to be flexible at all? Besides..." Lu Xianxian muttered, "I've heard that the other teachers have taken a lot of shopping cards and gift cards from their parents. As long as the parents don't say anything, how will the school know?" Li Rulan shook her head and said, "We definitely can't take other people's things. If we do this, we will feel bad. Moreover, we are teachers. How can we set such a wrong example for the students?" All right, I won't talk about you anymore. Let's wait slowly. We'll listen to it next week when we buy the record, okay?" Lu Xianxian sighed. "All right. I'm not saying that we can't. Didn't you just say that we can't buy it from Yang Shi's father? How about this? I'll tell him after school this afternoon. If possible, I'll trouble him to buy a record for us." Li Rulan smiled and said, "I'm not being stubborn like this, right?" Li Rulan was not pedantic. She understood that using money to buy a record from Yang Yi was not considered a bribe. It was just the same as asking an acquaintance to buy a record for her. Lu Xianxian was overjoyed. She reached out and hugged Li Rulan's waist. She lifted her hand and grabbed the soft peaks. She chuckled and said, "As expected, you're still the big-breasted Lon Lon that I know. You're still so good to me. Hey, Lu Xianxian, you female hooligan." Li Rulan was so ashamed that she wanted to die. If she wasn't still driving, she would have turned around and slapped Lu Xianxian. At this time, she could only stagger and grab the handlebars. She said angrily, "Let go of me. Don't say that I know you in the future." After the second class in the afternoon, she carried her drawing tools and prepared to go to the drawing interest class. However, she did not go downstairs directly. Instead, she went to the teacher's office for the first grade. It could be said that she was already familiar with the place. As long as it was Monday to Friday, she would come at least once a day. Just like now, she would find the head teacher, Teacher Li Rulan, and ask her to sign the card, "I'm a good student." The little girl handed the card to the teacher with an expectant look in her eyes. There were already 3 signatures on the card, and all of them were yes. If the teacher still signed yes today, she would get at least 2 gold coins. If the teacher still signed yes tomorrow, she would get 3 gold coins this week. This was enough to buy a doll. However, when Li Rulan received the card, she was not in a hurry to write. She held a pen and weighed it in her hand. She smiled gently at Shi and said, "Actually, your performance today was very good. Teacher Lu said that you answered the questions very enthusiastically. The physical education teacher also praised you for getting first place in the running test." Shi happily said to the teacher, "Yes, I ran very fast. They couldn't catch up with me." "That's very good." However, during the first class in the afternoon, the teacher saw that you were a little distracted, right? Li Rulan said to Shi with a smile. Shi hated turning points the most. Her originally happy expression suddenly drooped. She looked at the teacher with a wronged expression, thinking that the teacher was going to deny her efforts today. The teacher saw that you secretly looked out of the window for a while and was distracted for a while. Li Rulan said gently, "However, your overall performance today was very good. During the afternoon class, the teacher asked you to come up and write. You wrote very neatly and listened very attentively. So, I think that I can give you the evaluation of a good student. After all, you just had class in the afternoon. Perhaps you just woke up and were not focused enough. However, I still hope that you will pay more attention in the future. During class, you can't be distracted. No matter how beautiful the scenery outside the window is, we have to wait until after class to enjoy it, okay? Li Rulan asked gently. Li Rulan did not deliberately let Shishi off because she had a favor to ask of her. It was because this problem was indeed very small. She felt that she should not erase Shishi's efforts for a day because of a small mistake. Didn't she see that Shishi was so sad now? As a teacher, Li Rulan understood that by making Shishi nervous first and then making her happy, it would be easier for her to remember this mistake and correct it in the future. She should not be too harsh on punishment and make Shishi feel conflicted. Li Rulan was right. Shishi was starting to feel sad, but she suddenly saw a glimmer of hope. She looked at Teacher Li in surprise and quickly nodded. She even looked at the pen in Teacher Li's hand eagerly. Before she saw the result, she was still very worried. Li Rulan smiled as she signed her name and handed it to Shishi. When Shishi saw Teacher Li's name appear in the small circle of the word yes, she was relieved and smiled sweetly. Thank you, teacher. However, Shishi, who was about to turn around and go to class, was stopped by Li Rulan. Young Shi. She turned her little head in confusion. After the painting class this afternoon, can you wait for the teacher in the classroom? The teacher has something to say to your father. Li Rulan saw Shi's surprised and confused expression and quickly said, Don't worry, the teacher doesn't want to talk about you. You've been performing very well recently. The teacher has some personal matters to talk to your father about. She nodded her little head in confusion. Okay. Chapter 945. Sometimes, what you think is difficult to do is just a piece of cake in the eyes of others, not even worth mentioning. Li Rulan, who had just met Yang Yi and was about to pack up her things and go home, was a little absent-minded. Previously, her heart had been in a mess. Although she had mustered up the courage to ask Yang Yi for the record, many questions were still buzzing in her mind. What should I say? Will Yang Yi laugh at me and look down on me? If I say that I give him money first, will he refuse? If he insists on giving me the record for free and I argue with him, won't I get into an argument with him? However, everything that had happened just now made these thoughts that gave her a lot of pressure seem ridiculous. Okay. No problem. I'll ask Shi to bring it to you tomorrow. Yang Yi didn't hesitate at all. He agreed readily and accepted the money she handed over to buy the record. Yes, Yang Yi only said these 3 sentences. She had prepared a lot of explanations and many words that Yang Yi must accept the money, but she could only swallow them back into her stomach. She couldn't figure it out. Forget it, isn't this the result I want? Li Rulan shook her head and went to find Lu Xianxian, the female hooligan, to go home with her after school. In fact, Yang Yi didn't care at all. At least when he chatted with Murphy at night, he mentioned it. He smiled and teased Murphy, Shishi's teacher is quite upright. Besides that, Yang Yi really didn't care. Isn't it just a record? In the car, he was almost dizzy from the quarrel between Shishi and Lan Xian. Originally, it was just Shishi talking about her things at school. When she happily told her father that she got the "I'm a good student" card today and could have 3 more gold coins after collecting enough for tomorrow's share, Lan Xian felt wronged and said that she didn't have enough gold coins and couldn't make ends meet. So Shi and Lan Xian argued. It's not a little. You have come to our house for dinner many times. Shishi giggled and said, I didn't spend money, so I have a lot of money. But, isn't money used to eat? Lan Xian said innocently. That's right. But I think you also made a lot of money, Papa, don't you think so? She asked her father excitedly. Xian made a lot of money, but in terms of the total amount, Shishi, you made a little more. Yang Yi gave a fair judgment. Look. Lan Xian didn't feel ashamed. Instead, she smiled proudly at Shishi. All right then. She rolled her eyes and decided to change the topic. Papa, I drew today. Do you know what I drew? What is it? Your teacher brought you a new thing? Yang Yi asked with a smile. It's a dog. She giggled. Then the dog liked to run around and was disobedient. Our teacher chased it, but I still drew it. By the way, I can ask Sister Xiaowei to draw her dog. She suddenly thought of something else. Sister Xiaowei has a new dog at home. I haven't seen it yet. I heard that it's very cute. In the evening, Yang Yi arranged for Shi and Tong Tong to take a bath. The two little guys made a lot of noise again. After the bath, Tong Tong felt refreshed and went to bed first. Yang Yi accompanied Shi to read books for a while. He read books before going to bed. Because Murphy was not at home, he didn't have much time to read books with Shi these days. However, Shi remembered her chat with Chen Shuyun today. She told her father about it with interest. After she finished talking about the story and the dialogue between the characters, she said to her father worriedly, "Papa, will my brother become like Chen Shuyun's brother when he grows up?" Chen Shuyun said that you shouldn't like your brother. Are you affected by this sentence? Yang Yi asked with a smile. Cici nodded seriously and said, "That's right, I don't like people who complain either. If my brother likes to complain, then I don't like him either. But now, I still like my brother because he's so fun." Behind them, she still had a reluctant expression on her face. It was as if her brother was going to disappear with time and never return. Then let's not let him develop the bad habit of complaining. Yang Yi said with a smile, "You also said that you don't like to complain. We don't like people who like to complain and snitch, right?" She nestled in her father's arms and nodded gently. She raised her little head and looked at her father's face expectantly. Of course, Yang Yi wanted to help dispel Shi's doubts. He patiently explained to Shi, "Actually, the reason why Chen Shuyun's brother likes to complain so much is because of her parents' connivance. You can't tell Chen Shuyun what I said." Shi nodded obediently, pouted her little mouth and said, "I won't tell her." This is the same principle as children who like to cry. You see, sometimes, when my brother cries and wants something, but we don't want to give it to him, we will sit on the side and do our own things. We will let him cry to his heart's content, but we won't indulge his little temper. So, he understands that some things can't be changed by crying, right? Yang Yi said. Similarly, if Chen Shuyun's father likes to teach Chen Shuyun a lesson after hearing her younger brother snitching, it will make her younger brother feel that he can achieve his goal by snitching without paying a price. In that case, he will often use this method to bully his older sister. Yang Yi spread his hands. Then Chen Shuyun's brother is really too bad. She felt indignant for her little friend and said angrily, "You can't say that. We can't think of a person as a bad person. We have to think of a problem from many angles and also think of a solution from the root of the problem." Yang Yi said with a smile, "Let's put ourselves in his shoes and think about it. If Dad were to encounter such a situation, and your brother grew up a little and knew how to complain, how do you think Dad would deal with this problem?" She tilted her little head, thought carefully, and curiously said, "Ignore my brother? Just don't talk to him." "How can that be?" Yang Yi said with a smile. "What if what your brother said is true? Although he is a tattletale, but what if what he said is something that you did wrong?" She pouted her little mouth and unhappily said, "I don't know. Dad has to investigate clearly first. If it's not your fault, then Dad will turn around and blame your brother. How can you frame your sister? This is wrong." Yang Yi pretended to be strict and said. She giggled. "But if it's really your fault, Shi, then Dad will punish you." Yang Yi said. "Ah." Shi's smile faded. "Of course, not only will Dad punish you, but Dad will also punish your brother. For example, if Dad is Chen Shuyun's father, I will first beat Chen Shuyun, then beat her brother." Yang Yi found that when he used Chen Shuyun as an example, Shi's reaction would not be so big. She blinked her eyes in surprise and asked puzzledly, Why? Because even if what your brother said is right, Dad will not condone him tattletale. At this time, both of them will be punished. You are disobedient, eating your brother's candy, pa, spanking your butt. Then her brother. You are always tattletale, how incompetent does that make Dad? Can't Dad find out that your sister has done something wrong? Yang Yi laughed. Maybe because Yang Yi's words were funny, she could not help but giggle. Yang Yi waited for she to stop laughing, then said with a smile, "Of course, this is only the situation in Chen Shiyun's family. In our family, Dad will not let this happen. When you and your brother were young, Mom and Dad have been teaching you to know how to share, how to help others, how to care for others. We must have a kind heart. Your brother will grow up like you. We all love each other, and in life, we should care for each other more, not fight against each other and tattletale, don't you think so? Growing up in such a positive environment, you don't have to worry about your brother tattletale and become something you don't like." Yang Yi rubbed Shi's little head and said softly, "On the contrary, your brother will work hard to grow up and become powerful. He will say, 'Sister used to protect me, but in the future, I will be like Superman, like a hero to protect sister.' Why wouldn't big sister like such a younger brother?" Yang Yi asked. "Then I will always like my brother. I will also protect him, and I will always be older than him." Cece's mood became very happy. She twisted in her father's arms, turned her head back and forth, and giggled happily. Chapter 946. On Friday morning, Cece, who was wearing thick clothes and had a beautiful scarf tied around her father's neck, threw a tantrum. She refused to carry her small school bag and hugged her father's arm. She shook her father's arm and shouted, "I don't want to go to school." Why was she, who had always liked to play with her friends at school, unwilling to go to school today? The little girl soon told the truth aggrievedly, "Papa, I also want to pick up Mom." Yes, Murphy would come back to rest today. Speaking of which, she was quite capricious. If other people had an album like hers, they would want to run all kinds of shows and commercial performances every day, and get all the money they could earn, awards and honors. But Mo Fei and Yang Yi both put their families first, so they didn't have to worry about it. Work was necessary, and Murphy also needed to realize the value of her life. However, after marrying Yang Yi, she began to learn to find a balance between work and life. However, Murphy came back today, but she still had to go to school. Although Murphy had comforted she when she had a video call with her the day before yesterday, she thought that her brother could go to pick up her mother, and her father would also go to the airport to pick up her mother, but she would go to school alone. Thinking of this, she didn't know how desolate it was. She forgot what her mother said and felt so sad that she didn't want to go to school. Fortunately, Yang Yi still had a way to deal with her. After she finished complaining, he smiled gently and said, "But if you don't go to school this morning, who will help us tell Teacher Lee that we will give her mother's album at noon?" This change was mainly because Murphy knew about it last night. She wanted Yang Yi to give Li Rulin a signed collector's edition album. Yang Yi looked through it and found that there were collector's editions at home, but there was no signed version by Murphy. It just so happened that Murphy was back today. Yang Yi felt that there was no need to rush. He simply waited for Murphy to come back and sign the autograph before asking she to bring it back to her class teacher. She had stopped yelling excitedly just now. The little girl's emotions had stabilized a lot. Now that she heard her father's words, she hesitated. "Oh, and if you're late to school today, won't you lose the last chance for I'm a good student?" It was originally 3 gold coins, but now I can only get 2 gold coins. It's not enough for a doll. Yang Yi said softly. "I don't want a doll, I want Mom." The little girl's 2 little hands grabbed her 2 beautiful braids and played with them. She lowered her little head and pouted. However, she didn't sound very confident when she said that. She was obviously a little hesitant. "But if you go to school, it's not like we won't be able to see Mom, right?" Yang Yi continued to analyze. "Dad and Mom will go to school to pick you up for lunch at noon. We'll come back at night and take a plane to Yongcheng together. We'll be in Yongcheng for the entire weekend. There are so many opportunities to be with Mom. Are you still going to fight for a little while? If you don't go to school, Dad, Mom, and the teacher will be sad. Mom and Dad think that you've always been a good child. I'm an obedient child. Cece unwillingly twisted her little butt, her little body swaying as she made sounds of protest. Then let's go to school and follow Dad's plan. We'll see Mom at noon, okay? Yang Yi smiled as he took her school bag and gave Shishi a way out. Dad also believes that you're a good child. Although she was still a little unwilling, she still carried her school bag and got into Lon Xian's family car to go to school. After not seeing her children for 2 days, Murphy couldn't wait to go home. Last night, there was a small problem during the recording and she was busy until 10 p.m. She even had a video call with Tong Tong, so she took advantage of the break to chat for a while. Although she didn't have a good night's rest, she still took the 7 p.m. flight back to Zhongqing from the capital. The plane slowly landed at Zhongqing's international airport in the coastal area. After a while, Mo Xiaowan and Murphy, 2 beautiful women wearing sunglasses, appeared at the entrance of the arrival hall. Mo Xiaowan was wearing a suit and looked like a manager. Compared to Murphy, who was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses, Murphy's star shone brighter. However, although Mo Fei looked cold, she was not as cold as a big star. She also took out her mobile phone and looked around anxiously like an ordinary passenger, looking for the traces of her relatives who had come to pick her up at the airport. Here. Yang Yi's voice was deep and magnetic. It was very distinguishable in the noisy environment. Murphy followed the sound and found him immediately. Yang Yi smiled and waved at her as he walked towards her with Tong Tong in his arms. Murphy's indifferent face suddenly showed a hint of joy. She called Mo Xiaowan and walked quickly towards Yang Yi. Tong Tong hadn't noticed his mother at first. The little guy was in a daze from waiting. It was his father's big movement that brought him back to his senses. He looked in the direction his father was pointing and finally saw his mother. A real mother was much more attractive than the one on the TV screen. The little guy was pleasantly surprised. He cried out in surprise as he struggled to get down. He couldn't wait any longer. He wanted to be in front of his father and walk over to welcome his mother. Of course, this was a beautiful idea. However, it wasn't possible. The arrival hall was crowded with people. How could Yang Yi let Tong Tong, who was so small that anyone could kick him around like a ball, walk? Fortunately, Murphy had already walked over. Yang Yi only used one hand to gently hug Murphy. Murphy's arms were occupied by Tong Tong. The little guy directly stretched his body out and stood between his father and mother. Mo Xiaowan watched Murphy carry Tong Tong from the side. She smiled and said to Murphy, "Look at how much he missed you." Murphy hugged Tong Tong and intimately rubbed her forehead against him. Then, she smiled proudly at Mo Xiaowan and said, "Of course, he's my flesh and blood." However, Murphy was now a hot topic in the news. When she appeared at Shanghai International Airport, many reporters had already caught her whereabouts. Knowing that her flight was to Zhongqing, many powerful media outlets informed their reporters stationed in Zhongqing. Therefore, before Yang Yi and the others could leave the hall, they were heavily surrounded by reporters. They still had to be interviewed by the reporters. Murphy hugged Tong Tong. She had already prepared a cap for the little guy to prevent him from being photographed and blinded by the cameras. Murphy agreed to answer a few questions from the reporters under the protection of Yang Yi and Mo Xiaowan. "Murphy, your latest album expresses such sadness. Is it because you and Yang Yi's marriage and relationship are in trouble?" The first reporter asked this question. It could be said that it was the hottest topic in the news for the past week. However, now that he had asked this question, the surrounding reporters immediately hissed in disdain. It should be noted that Mo Fei had already responded to many reporters this week, and this question was not new at all. However, Murphy still treated them equally and answered seriously, "Actually, when you saw Yang Yi pick me up with a child, you should have a clear answer to this question. Yang Yi and I have always been in a good relationship and we will continue to be in a good relationship in the future." The second reporter's question was of a high standard, and it was very vicious. "Murphy, I'm sorry. I actually asked this question to Young-E first. The content of the songs in this album that you prepared for Murphy, we all believe that you didn't write them for Murphy. After all, your relationship is so good. What I want to ask is, these songs, are you writing them for your former girlfriends? Former girlfriends, those. These keywords were casually mentioned by him, but anyone could hear the profoundness behind them. Suddenly, all the reporters' eyes and cameras were aimed at Young-E. The atmosphere suddenly became subtle. How would Young-E answer this question? Chapter 947. In the face of this question, Young-E was very calm, as if he had already expected it. He just smiled and said, "Ex-girlfriend? That doesn't exist." This answer, with the internet buzzwords of Young-E's previous life, gave the entertainment reporters of this life a refreshing feeling. Many reporters' eyes lit up, and they quickly recorded Young-E's words in their small notebooks. Ex-girlfriend? That doesn't exist. This sentence can be used as a title on its own. Of course, the reporter who asked that question was still not satisfied. He couldn't help but ask, "Then how did you write such a sad love song? Is it because you and Murphy's relationship had twists and turns?" Murphy's hand holding Young-E's hand couldn't help but tighten. Young-E felt it. He quietly pinched Murphy's soft hand and continued to say calmly, "It should have been the next reporter's question, but I'll answer this question again. A creator's experience is limited, but his imagination is infinite. Just like the fairy tales I've created, and my new book, The Chronicles of Narnia, that I'm about to publish, these books are completely imaginary. You don't think I've experienced those strange things, do you? We rely on imagination for a living, not personal experience. This new album's main theme is sad love songs. It's also because many fans feel a little tired of listening to our love songs. They said that they want to listen to some songs similar to Listen to the Sea. After Murphy and I studied it, we felt that it was necessary to listen to the fans' suggestions. So, I conceived a few sad emotional stories in my mind, and the inspiration came. Young-E's last sentence was a little annoying, but the reporters didn't dwell on this issue anymore. After a few rounds of questions, the last reporter who was called asked a question that many people had ignored. Mo Fei, in the unveiling event of your studio's official microblog, a video was released. It was the video of you crying after singing a song. Murphy nodded gently, indicating that she knew what the other party was talking about. My question is, from this video, we can see that these songs still have a great impact on your emotions. May I ask how you overcome it, and whether these songs now have a negative impact on your relationship with Young-E? Another question asked about two things. These reporters were very adept at playing these little tricks. But since it was the last question, Murphy didn't argue with the other party. Like Young-E, she had been answering the reporters' questions very calmly. When I first sang these songs, it was because I wanted to express the feelings of these lyrics, so I kept trying to figure it out. Sometimes I felt very uncomfortable, like what you saw in the video. I couldn't help but cry. She and Young-E looked at each other sweetly, then continued, "But fortunately, because Young-E has always been by my side, comforting me and letting me get rid of the emotions of these songs, now when I sing these songs, I can more freely mobilize these emotions and no longer be affected by them." Seeing them showing off their love as if there was no one else around, the reporters really felt depressed in their hearts. "Sorry, Murphy rushed back and needs to rest. Today's interview will end here, okay?" Young-E protected Murphy as they walked out from the crowd of reporters who still wanted to continue. Only when they got into his nanny van did they completely get rid of these reporters. Near noon, in the guest bedroom on the second floor of the Young family villa, Murphy, who was sleeping soundly, dreamed that a bear pounced in front of her. Suddenly, a slap landed on her face. This feeling was very real. "Hubby, save me!" Murphy hurriedly shouted as she woke up from the nightmare and opened her eyes in a daze. In front of her eyes, a chubby little palm was indeed pressing on her face. However, this little hand was not as scary as the big black bear's. It was white and tender, and looked very tempting to take a bite out of it. He. Murphy was still a little absent-minded, but when she heard Tong Tong's familiar laughter, her heart immediately broke free from the scary dream and returned to normal. Mom. The little guy thought that he was playing with his mother. When he saw his mother open her eyes, he was so happy that he danced around. You're up? Yang Yi's magnetic voice rang out beside her. Didn't you sleep well just now? Did you have a nightmare? Without looking, Murphy could guess that Yang Yi had brought Tong Tong upstairs to wake her up. Actually, Murphy didn't sleep for long. When she got home, it was almost 10 o'clock. She still had to pick up Shi for lunch later. If it wasn't for her terrible sleep last night, she wouldn't have taken a nap. Mo Fei stretched her hands out of the quilt, stretched lazily, and murmured in a nasal voice, "What time is it?" 11 o'clock. Get ready, we're leaving. Yang Yi brought Murphy's clothes over. Actually, when he saw that Murphy was a little tired, he felt a little sorry for her. After he was done with other things, he even helped Tong Tong put on clothes and shoes before waking Murphy up. I didn't sleep badly. I really didn't sleep well last night, and I had to get up early to catch a flight. It's more comfortable to sleep at home. Murphy got up from the bed and reached out to pinch her son's nose. Then, she knelt on the bed and hugged Yang Yi's neck with her arms. She said coquettishly, "You were the one who asked Mommy to wake me up. I was so scared that I thought a bear was going to hit me in my dream. I asked you for help, but you didn't respond." Yang Yi hugged Murphy's slender waist and kissed her forehead. He smiled. "It's all my fault." When Tong Tong realized that his mother wasn't hugging him and was hugging his father instead, he started to protest. He stood up shakily on the soft bed and tugged at his mother's pajamas. He pouted and called out, "Mom, hug." Hee. My son is jealous. Murphy smiled slyly. She pushed Yang Yi away and went back to hug her son. She glanced at Yang Yi proudly. This time, I'm not the one who's jealous. Yang Yi didn't mind at first, but when he saw Murphy's proud expression, he felt that he had to play along with Murphy's performance. He gritted his teeth and waved his hand, slamming it down on the bed from the sky. His acting was very exaggerated. He even scolded angrily, "This little bastard, he still won't let me hug my wife. When I get back, I'll spank his ass into 8 pieces, 4 on each side." Murphy was amused by Yang Yi's expression. She hugged Tong Tong and laughed as she lay on the blanket. Chapter 948. Shi, let's go eat. After the last class in the morning, Lu Xiaoyu opened the plastic bag from her school bag and took out her lunchbox with a strawberry pattern printed on it. The little girl said excitedly to Cici, "I'm not eating lunch at school. My papa and mom are coming to pick me up for lunch." She was a little apologetic at first, but soon the little girl became happy and said in high spirits, "My mom is back, but I didn't see her this morning. But my papa said that we can go to Yongcheng to play together." Wow. Lu Xiaoyu didn't know what to say and could only sigh with envy. "Little you, I'm going to Yongcheng to play. Do you want me to bring you a gift?" She didn't care about her little friend's attitude. She just wanted to be closer to her good friend from the bottom of her heart. "You want a gift? Okay. Lu Xiaoyu suddenly became excited. At this time, Lan Xian, who wasn't very happy this morning, slowly moved over and said with a pout, Shi, I also want to go eat with your father." Shi tilted her head and looked at Lan Xian with a troubled expression. But didn't your mom say that you have to eat at school?" This morning, Yang Yi took the initiative to invite Lan Xian and Shi out for lunch. Although Yang Yi and Lan Cao Kai usually worked together to make Lan Xian lose weight and were a little harsh on Lan Xian, Yang Yi still doted on Lan Xian. For example, if the little girl saved up 3 gold coins and came over for lunch, Yang Yi would try his best to cook some of her favorite dishes. However, Wu Jingjing knew that Murphy had just returned and their family was about to reunite. It was inappropriate for her daughter to get involved, so she declined when Yang Yi mentioned it. "But I don't want to eat lunch alone at school. Lon Xian pitifully looked at her little friend and said sadly, Xian, let's have dinner together. There are two of us. Lu Xiaoyu said. No, no, I just want to eat with Shi. Lon Xian covered her ears and turned her head hard, as if to say, I don't want to listen, I don't want to listen. Lu Xiaoyu's kindness was rejected, and the little girl looked a little disappointed. Was she going to eat alone again? How pitiful. But what if your mom doesn't agree? She was still a little tangled. She was too principled. Of course, this was not a bad thing, just like there was nothing wrong with being kind. Lon Xian rolled her eyes and suggested, Shi, can we have dinner together and not tell my mom? Shi looked at Lon Xian with some surprise and said, But, won't we be deceiving mom? If we don't tell her, she won't know. Lon Xian said indifferently. But we'll still be deceiving mom. She frowned worriedly. How about? Lon Xian was in a dilemma for a while, and finally came up with a new idea. Let's have dinner, and then we'll go back and tell my mom at night. Then we won't be deceiving my mom. I'll tell her everything. Lon Xian learned the so-called kill first and report later without a teacher. She felt that something was wrong, but she really couldn't find a reason to refute. In the end, Lon Xian's little trick was thwarted in front of the adults. Although Yang Yi loved her, he didn't intend to help Lon Xian deceive her mother. Xian, be obedient at noon and eat at school. Uncle will ask Shi to pack some delicious food for you and bring it back in the afternoon. Is that okay? Yang Yi comforted Lon Xian, who was in a bad mood. Lon Xian thought about it carefully. It seemed to be okay. Anyway, she had delicious food. She didn't need to be scolded by her mother. Only then did she regain her happy mood. She turned around and skipped to find Lu Xiaoyu for dinner. Murphy also carried Tong Tong and went with Yang Yi to pick up Shi. She personally gave her signed album to Li Rulan. During this time, the two of them had a conversation. Murphy's main purpose was to get closer to Li Rulan. After all, Teacher Li was Shi's class teacher. If she helped and paid more attention, Shi would be taken care of more at school. Li Rulan took the album back to the office in a trance. She flipped through the promotional pages, posters, and photos in a daze. In fact, Li Rulan had seen Murphy last time at Shi's house. She didn't change much from the Murphy she saw today. She was still dressed simply, and her appearance and temperament were extraordinary. However, she didn't give people a feeling that she was unapproachable. If that was all, Li Rulan wouldn't feel confused. She and Lu Xianxian liked Murphy's songs, so these few nights, they even watched the music chart show. So Li Rulan saw that Murphy was radiant on stage, especially when she was singing. She definitely had the aura of a superstar and completely crushed the other small stars on stage. The quiet and cold Murphy indeed gave people a feeling that they couldn't get close to her. The Murphy on stage was so different from the Murphy in real life. Li Rulan couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Are all stars like this? They're like two different people on and off stage? At noon, Lu Xianxian, who went to take care of Class 2's lunch break, found a chance to sneak back to the grade office. She went directly to Li Rulan's desk and asked excitedly, Lon, how was it? Did they give you the album? Li Rulan smiled and took out the album signed by Yang Yi and Murphy from the drawer and gave it to Lu Xianxian. Beautiful. We can listen to songs tonight. Lu Xianxian said with joy as she took it and looked at it. However, Lu Xianxian didn't care as much as Li Rulan. She looked at it and muttered, why is this album so weird? Weird? Li Rulan asked doubtfully, is it broken? No, it's not broken. It's too good. Lu Xianxian pointed at the book-like packaging of the album in her hand. There were exquisite lyrics pages and poster pictures. She whispered to Li Rulan, I remember that the albums I bought before didn't have so many things. Shouldn't a record be just a shell and a disc? I don't understand what you mean. Li Rulan was confused. Lu Xianxian didn't discuss with Li Rulan. She took out her phone and quickly searched for it. Soon, she cried out in surprise, "Wow! Wow! What? Keep your voice down. Don't disturb the other teachers. They need to sleep," Li Rulan said reproachfully. Lu Xianxian didn't care. She pushed the phone in front of Li Rulan and whispered, "Look, this is a collector's edition. It's a grade higher than the ordinary album." "You mean it's not the one you bought in the video store?" Li Rulan asked with some surprise. "It depends on how you define it." Lu Xianxian smiled and said, "The video store also sells collector's editions, but the collector's edition is more expensive than the ordinary edition. They sell it outside for 56 yuan. The money you gave to Yang Yi is only 18 yuan for the ordinary edition, right?" Li Rulan was dumbfounded as she said, "That's right. Did I give too little money?" She said with some self-blame, "That won't do. I have to make up the difference." "Okay. Lon, forget it. Why do you have to make up the difference? They don't care about this small amount of money at all. They took the money you gave before just so you don't take it to heart." Lu Xianxian smiled and said, "If you insist on making up the difference, then it's a bit too tacky. Moreover, do you think it's enough to make up the difference of a few dozen yuan?" Lu Xianxian pointed to Yang Yi and Murphy's signatures on the record. "Just these two signatures, together with this record, can be sold for thousands or even tens of thousands of yuan on the internet. How are you going to make up the difference?" Li Rulan looked at Lu Xianxian in surprise. "So much? Of course. Yang Yi and Murphy are famous for not liking to participate in commercial activities, so there are very few opportunities for fans to sign autographs. What's more, both of them signed at the same time." Lu Xianxian was now very familiar with these celebrity gossip. She spoke with assurance, "Of course, this kind of additional value depends on how you look at it. If you want to sell it for money, there may be fanatical fans who will pay such a high price. But if you just use it to listen to songs, no matter what others think, it's only worth 50 yuan. There's another possibility. No one is willing to pay such a high price, so it's just an ordinary record in our hands. We can't sell it. Others gave it to us. If we exchange it for money, I'll feel bad." Li Rulan couldn't help but say, "Hee, I knew you would say that." Lu Xianxian smiled and said, "Then you can listen to the song in peace. Don't think so much. It's just a few dozen yuan anyway. Since others gave it to you, they didn't want to take it back." You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.